Chapter 12:11. With an idea in mind, he went to find Chin after some careful planning. The biggest difficulty in doing this was that he had to fake his death, so that people wouldn't think it was fake. This would be impossible for ordinary people. If it was a fake video made with computer special effects, it would never be able to pass the dark web's inspection, no matter how real it was. But for Chen Guang, it was as easy as drinking soup. He wasn't bragging. As a veteran who could come back to life, even if he was turned into minced meat, it wouldn't be a problem even if he had to send his head to the dark web for verification. It was so much so that Chen Guang even wished for that to happen. Aren't you afraid of a head-tracking device? Wouldn't I be able to kill them all? If the dark web really dared to jump out and take his head, he would be able to uproot the organization. Of course, this was just his wishful thinking. It was very likely that the dark web didn't have a real organizer or manager at all. At most, there were only some technicians in charge of maintaining the program, commonly known as senior network managers. Even things like video verification, which involved the distribution of rewards, might be done by a very advanced program that had been written in advance. There might be a group of profiteering top computer programmers or hackers working for them, constantly optimizing the algorithms and management system of the entire website. But these people would always hide in the dark, unless they jumped out and asked for it. At first, there were indeed people on the dark web who tried to use technical means to cheat the bounty, and they even succeeded. But such people also ended up in a miserable state. They became the public enemy of all the assassin organizations, and were targeted by all the other organizations. They were treated even worse than Chen Guang, and not a single piece of them was left. Because of all these reasons, as long as Chen Guang's video verification was authentic, he would be able to fool everyone. Also, he had to get an account that could be verified by the dark web to successfully cheat the bounty. What do you think? What do you think of my idea? Isn't it great? When the time comes, all they have to do is take a photo of my death in a more tragic manner, and then upload it. We're not acting. We're really going to die in front of them. We'll just make the bounty disappear, and all the problems will be solved. Besides, that wasn't a small number. It was 400 million USD. Although I don't lack money now, the feeling of picking up money for free is great just thinking about it. Half an hour later, he told Chin about his wonderful idea. Chin looked at Chen Guang, who was beaming with joy, with a face full of horror. Her mind was in a daze for a long time before she asked doubtfully, "If I didn't mishear you just now, you said something like this. Find a few or dozens of people to give you a round of heavy weapons, then get someone to chop off your head. Then, we'll find someone who's registered on the dark web and upload the video. At the same time, we'll publicly announce that you're dead, right?" Chen Guang nodded excitedly. "That's right, that's it." Chin swallowed her saliva. "You can be said to be very wild. But this is the best and most labor-saving method. In any case, even if all the 27,000 assassins in the world go to heaven, as long as the bounty is still on, my family and friends won't be able to live in peace. We can't let this go on forever." Chin looked at him calmly talking about such a horrible thing, and was speechless. It does make a little bit of sense. It does sound flawless and convincing, but there's something I don't know if I should say. Chen Guang waved his hand generously. "Go ahead. Have you forgotten the biggest flaw in your entire plan?" "Loophole? What? That's impossible." Chin was about to break down. She wanted to kill him. "How can you cheat a bounty like this? Aren't you really dead? What's the use of money? A few days ago, our technicians used the dark web's advanced account that we seized from the world's breaker to check inside the dark web. According to their report, the dark web's censorship system is very powerful. It's impossible to fake a video." Chen Guang was amused. "Now I'm relieved. We can go in directly. We won't be recognized as the world's breaker, will we? Now that the whole world knows that the world's breaker is in our hands, won't we be suspected if we use their account?" Chin answered subconsciously. "That won't be the case. According to our insider, all the accounts on the dark web are anonymous. Not only that, every time we log in or use the account, a new code will be generated randomly. That's so secretive. That's good. Let's figure out how to act. Chen Guang suddenly understood. No wonder he couldn't use his mind to look for the mission issuer when he was in God mode. The dark web's ability to hide their identity was too powerful. Wait. That's not what I want to talk to you about. Don't interrupt me. Chen Guang was speechless when he saw that she was still struggling with this problem. He waved his hand decisively. Do you think I'm stupid? If I'm really going to die, why would I come up with such a stupid idea? I already said it's an act. You're playing dead. Xianqin narrowed her eyes and glanced at him. Playing dead? How can you not die when your head is broken? Ha! You're not human, right? You're an earthworm, right? Go. I'm serious. Stop talking nonsense, and think carefully about how to operate this matter. In short, you don't have to worry about anything else. Just help me think of a way to make this matter convincing enough. Xianqin still didn't believe him. Chen Guang grabbed a utility knife from her desk and swiped it across his palm in front of her. He then activated the earth explosion talent to show her why the flowers were so red. Looking at the wound in front of her, that healed like computer special effects, Xianqin completely understood. She came to a sudden realization. A long time ago, when she and Wu Miaowan were in his house, an extremely strange thing had happened to this fellow. He had only taken a bath, and the bones in some parts of his body had undergone earth-shattering changes. Now it seemed like his extraordinary recovery ability was also a manifestation of that. But this was too absurd. Can a severed head recover like this? Xianqin's heart was shaken. Chen Guang snorted. Yes, it can. Do you want me to perform it for you? No. Then hurry up and think of a way. I think Xuelin will be more professional in this matter. After all, he used to be a professional agent. He has always been in charge of the Shatterer. All right, it's settled then. That afternoon, Xuelin, who was also traumatized, took out a complete set of plans. He was more shocked than Xianqin, but he had a stronger blind trust in Chen Guang. Obeying orders was the duty of a soldier. Although Xuelin was now part of the management of the Guangding General Headquarters, and was no longer a frontline soldier, deep down he had never changed. Not bad, the idea is good, but the person must have good acting skills and can't be recognized. Looking at the plan in front of him, Chen Guang nodded with satisfaction. Brother Guang, don't worry. In order to get this done, we've decided to use the highest level insider. He's a lone killer. Xuelin explained. Chen Guang's eyes narrowed. Killer? He's different from ordinary killers. He doesn't accept every mission. In a sense, he belongs to our agent system. That's good. That night, an earth-shattering battle took place at the old site of the Chen family's villa in Lilai County. It could be said that the sky was dark and the moon was dim. The rumbling sound lasted for more than half an hour. The hill where the villa was originally located was cut in half, and the strong smell of gunfire drifted from the east to the west of the city. It was a sleepless night for everyone in the county. Many people stood by the window and looked into the distance, and from time to time, they were frightened by the flames and radiance that soared into the sky. It was more like saying that thunder had descended on the world. After a night, someone finally mustered up the courage to come from afar to investigate the situation. But he was so frightened by the destruction in front of him that he lost consciousness. No one knew what happened, but on another level, a video was suddenly published on the dark web, causing an uproar. The video was intermittent. At the beginning, the camera was very far away. It showed a very fast figure standing on the old site of the Chen family's villa. At the same time, at least 10 long-range attacks were raining down on him from all directions. These big guys were very powerful, but they were at the level that ordinary organizations could get their hands on. It could be called a small modern weapons exhibition. Finally, the owner of the figure was careless and took a shot. He seemed to be seriously injured. The video was cut off. The next scene was the live shot of Chen Guang's head that he had discussed with the others. His death was very tragic. His eyes were filled with unwillingness and despair. The anger that poured out, and the lines that he roared, "I won't let you go even if I become a ghost." It was simply heartbreaking and tearful. When the list of people in the mental asylum increased to 25,000, the news of Chen Guang's death spread at the same time. The entire underground world was shocked. Well, it could only be said that the underground world was severely damaged and only had half of its strength left. This guy who was blessed by God actually died in his own home. Everyone knew that they should have ambushed him near the villa that was blown up. Many top organizations had done the same before. Unfortunately, before the opportunity came, they were first cursed and went crazy. Just when the world was wondering who else could kill him, he suddenly died in the vicinity of the villa. This was retribution. He must have known what had happened to the other organizations and let his guard down for a moment. This allowed the top organizations that had escaped misfortune and ambushed near his home to take advantage of it. Which organization was it that had hit the jackpot? Forget it, this was not important anymore. The nightmare of the global assassin organizations had finally come to an end. Seeing that the highest bounty in history of 400 million had finally been changed to a completed state, and the bounty had also been cleared to zero, many second and third-rate organizations that had stayed out of the matter and escaped the disaster could not describe how they felt. They felt regretful, but also relieved. Chapter 12:12. Just as Chen Guang had expected, even if these low-level teams were scared out of their wits by the terrifying name list, it was still a total of $400 million. Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance, this was how the world was. As long as there was a 300% profit, people would be willing to bet their lives on it, let alone $400 million. Now that the bounty was gone, there was naturally no need to think about it anymore. However, Chen Guang was not in the mood to pay attention to the situation on the dark web. Instead, he was helplessly dealing with one phone call after another. He had thought that the influence of this matter would only be spread on the dark web. He did not expect that many people he knew would receive the news as well. The phone calls coming in from all directions made him feel like his head was about to explode. The first thing most of them said was, "Chen Guang, are you dead?" "I'm not dead, I'm not dead." "That's impossible. I've seen the video. You died so tragically." Old Master Guang held his phone and wished he could spit on the other party's face. "I'm going to die. Who's talking to you guys now? You're not a ghost, are you? Alright, you guys win." However, he did not have to worry about the news of him still being alive being leaked. Those who received the news and called him were using the highest level of confidential communication. As long as he told them his true purpose, the news could still be hidden for the time being. Once the limelight was over, he would swagger outside again. Even if the content of the video was leaked through some channel, it wouldn't matter. He could just say that it was made with computer special effects. What? Others will ask, what special effects are these so realistic? What can you do even if I don't tell you? In short, in a certain field, the news of Chen Guang's death was like a muffled thunder that resounded through the entire sky. Most people were shocked and relieved, but there was still a small group of people who were extremely ecstatic. They were the people who had issued the mission. Other ordinary people might not have the chance to know such secrets, but as the mission issuers, they naturally received the notification that the mission had been completed. In these 2 short days, these people's emotions had been on an indescribable roller coaster. When the news of almost all the top assassin organizations around the world being wiped out spread, these people were terrified. The more names there were on the list, the more frightened and desperate they became. Just when these people were about to despair and wanted to take the initiative to find Chen Guang to repent, they suddenly received a piece of heavy news. This guy was dead. Great sorrow and great joy came too suddenly, and those with weak hearts could not bear it at all. A respectable old man in the Schultz family died of a heart disease. As a result, the poor Schultz family's joy turned into great sorrow. Fortunately, this family did not have a history of heart disease. Otherwise, another one might die from anger. When the chairman of Sanshin Group heard this, he silently tore up the check in his hand. Inside the check was $200 million that he had asked his family to prepare. He had intended to add more money to the fund, but now it seemed unnecessary. It was the same for the Japanese consortium. However, there was a force that even Chen Guang did not expect to be involved. It was Songming Yuan of the Tiansong Water Group. Out of the $400 million bounty, he took $20 million. The reason why Song Mingyuan was bleeding so much wasn't because of his jealousy with Chen Guang over Tang Ying, nor was it because of what happened in the Tangshan industrial factory. As Chen Guang once thought, since his 5 god-level formulas were exposed, in addition to the major photocatalyst laboratories around the world that directly participated in the competition, the old-school environmental protection companies were in the most difficult situation in many other aspects. The establishment of Chengwang Environmental Protection indicated that Chen Guang's next step must be to focus on the environmental protection industry. Under the premise that they sat on the 5 invincible photocatalysts, other companies had no competitiveness at all. There was only one way for companies to survive in the new environment, which was to rely on Chengwang Environmental Protection by photocatalysts at an affordable price and apply them to the new process. Otherwise, the only fate waiting for them was to be gradually nibbled away until they perish. At the behest of Chen Guang, the commercial development team, under Chengwang Environmental Protection, had begun to arrange production lines in advance and accept pre-orders. Although there was still at least 1 to 2 years before large-scale industrial production, and the exact cost could not be estimated, it was not a problem to reach a preliminary intention. Song Mingyuan sent someone to the United States early in the morning to negotiate with Chengwang Environmental Protection, and then he received desperate news. Chengwang Environmental Protection refused to deal with Tiansong Water Group. This matter was much more serious than jealousy, or a small conflict in the Tangshan industrial plant. This was almost a death sentence for Tiansong Water Group. Song Mingyuan thought about it, and decided to take the risk. As long as Chen Guang died, all problems could be solved. He did not expect that not long after he issued the task, someone would immediately increase the bounty. This was not the end. In an unexpected situation, the bounty was quickly increased to the jaw-dropping figure of 400 million USD. Then Chen Guang finally died. When he received the news, Song Mingyuan immediately fell into ecstasy. He even used his mobile phone to take a video. After thinking about it, he decided to let Tang Ying see the video. Of course, he would not be stupid enough to send it himself. Instead, he gave it to someone else and asked them to create a title. Good and evil will be rewarded. Those who are unjust will die. The death of Chen Guang. And then directly spread it on the internet. The omnipotent Superman Chen Guang's popularity was terrifying. Now even if he walked on the street, he could make headlines, let alone this kind of blinding title. The person Song Mingyuan found was very knowledgeable. Afraid that others would not recognize it, he simply re-edited the video. The beginning of the video was the scene of the poor Master Guang making steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. It was quite unsuitable for children. It was extremely violent and bloody, guaranteed to make people dumbfounded at first sight. As a result, the moment the video was uploaded to the internet, it went viral in the blink of an eye. The number of reposts, comments, and whatnot were not a problem at all. In short, this was a video that could instantly promote a big account. If not for fear of revenge from Chen Guang's people, Song Mingyuan's henchmen would even want to keep this temporarily registered account. As a result, Chen Guang's phone, which had just settled down, immediately exploded with calls. He was really troubled. Fortunately, the people who were especially concerned about him were basically protected by experts arranged by the Guangdong General Headquarters. They could also act as safe messengers. Chen Guang first decisively turned off his phone, then got Xia and Qin to notify them one by one through the internal confidential channel. Half a day had passed. Most of the people who were most concerned about his life and death had calmed down, but still could not figure out what he was up to. However, this was how it was in the country. It was not the first time that news of a celebrity's death was spread while he was still alive. It was just that this kind of thing happened to Chen Guang. That was all. That was not the end. His parents had been happily playing cards when his cousin, who had been scrolling through Weibo, suddenly shouted and rushed into the activity room with his phone, shouting in panic, "Oh my God! Brother Guang is dead. He's dead. Oh my God!" His cousin first received a slap on the face. Then, he played the video to everyone, feeling very aggrieved. Everyone was almost scared out of their wits. Now the whole family rushed to Chen Guang's room. Chen Guang had just been relieved, but he was shocked by his family again. His mother knocked on his door with a pale face shouting, Chen Guang! Chen Guang! Are you still alive? Chen Guang opened the door and looked at everyone with a constipated expression. I say, what are you guys trying to do? He asked despite knowing the answer. His little cousin rushed up and grabbed his shoulder. Brother, you're dead. The internet is saying you're dead. There's even a video. Behind the crowd, his niece and little cousin were crying out loud. Chen Guang almost choked on his own saliva. He coughed violently for a while, then pointed to his face. You're right. I really died a terrible death. I say, are you guys stupid? I don't even know what you're talking about. The internet says I'm dead, and you believe it. I'm standing right here. Do I have to explain to you that I'm still alive? I really have to give it to you. Chapter 12-13. Just as he was being cocky, Chen Guoli slapped him on the head. You're the only one who's cocky. You're the only one who's cocky. Isn't everyone just concerned about you? Tell me what's going on. Since you're fine, why would such a video be circulating on the internet? Chen Guang decided to lie. Wasn't I filming a movie a while ago? I was preparing for the second movie. This is just an excerpt from the trailer. And just a trailer. Slice. Chen Guoli asked with a blank look on his face. Chen Guang grunted through his nose. That's right, it's a trailer. Movie promotions often use this method. First, they release a special effects scene to stir up the topic and popularity. When it's released, the box office will be better. Chen Guoli stared at him for a long time before nodding skeptically. All right, I'll take what you said as the truth. But what kind of lousy movie are you filming? Aren't you the male lead? You'll die the moment you step out? It's not like that. I can't explain it clearly in a few words. In this trailer, it looks like I'm dead. But that's just a fake death. I can revive later on. His little cousin shouted loudly. That can't be right. You can revive even when your head is cut off. Brother Guang, are you filming a military theme or a fantasy film? Chen Guang coughed lightly. This movie is our own creation. It's the world's first full-on special effects military romance fantasy film. It's the kind that's super explosive. His cousin, who was at the side, exclaimed. Didn't they say that humans aren't allowed to become spirits after the founding of the People's Republic? Can this be filmed? Can it be released? Oh, I understand now. This is the handwriting of the gunfight version. I'll spit blood all over your face. Go, go, go. On the other side, when everyone heard that it was actually a movie, the older generation immediately lost interest and went back to the mahjong table while shouting and yelling. On the other hand, the younger cousins and younger cousins who were of the same age or were yelling excitedly. They all wanted to ask for a role in the movie or to be a bystander or something. Chen Guoli waved his hand and said, Go, go, go. Move aside. Filming a movie isn't about running a house. It's about spending money to do business. If you guys mess up the movie, we'll lose tens of millions or even hundreds of millions every minute. Even if we sell all of you kids, it won't be enough. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. Chen Guoli used the tiger's might to scare everyone away before he greeted the family of his friend and told them that he would be coming over immediately. After that, he pulled Chen Guang to the side. Chen Guang saw that he had finally muddled through and felt slightly relieved. Dad, what's the matter? Chen Guoli looked nervously at the back of Feng Rong, who was walking away. He then whispered, Son, look at your dad's age. He's never been on TV before. Why don't you arrange a role for your dad to satisfy his craving? Did you just say it's just a passerby? Can you arrange a scene with Zhao Lingji, the kind where I fall in love at dusk? You don't know how much your dad liked her when he was young. The Zhao Lingji that Chen Guoli was talking about was an old female celebrity who had been popular all over the country since 30 years ago. Now she was approaching 60 years old, but she still looked as young as she was in her 20s. She had taken good care of herself. Chen Guang's mouth formed an O shape. He then turned to look at his mother's back. Chen Guoli understood. Help me explain to your mom when the time comes. Tell her that it's necessary for the plot. Let me play your dad in the movie. Anyway, the goodies should be kept within the family. Mom, Dad said. Goodbye, goodbye, this unlucky silly son. Chen Guoli fled. When he returned to Feng Rong's side, she asked suspiciously, "What did you say to Xiao Guang just now?" Chen Guoli coughed softly. "I said that he should think of a way to control the video. It's not good for children to see it. It's bloody and violent." "That's true. Yes. Chen Guang listened to his dad and mom's nonsense from afar. He was convinced. It seemed that his ability to adapt to changing circumstances was 100% inherited from his dad. This old ginger was quite spicy. When he returned to his room, he was still a little confused. He had already expected the verified video to be leaked on the dark web, but he didn't expect it to be so soon. Those who had the qualifications to log on the dark web were not ordinary people. Even if others cheered for his death, logically speaking, they should not have exposed it to the general public so quickly. They should have kept quiet and made a fortune. Who could have done it? Investigate. Investigate it thoroughly. He had to investigate thoroughly. Drag this bastard out for me. Find out who uploaded the video. Can we use technical means to track it? He ordered Xuelin. Xuelin answered decisively, "Yes, sir." Songming Yuan would never have thought that his superfluous actions would completely betray him. He felt that he had only asked someone to upload a video that would be exposed on the internet sooner or later. He had also specially instructed his subordinates to be careful. This subordinate had also found an expert and used very advanced hacking methods. It would not be easy to find out who it was. However, under Chen Guang's order, the Guangdong General Administration, which had extremely high confidentiality authority, urgently mobilized, and the Guangdong General Administration came forward to coordinate the operation. In an instant, the technical staff of the major information management centers all over the country worked overtime to trace the source of the video. Songming Yuan's underlings were cautious enough. They had also found the best of the Internet Water Army, but they were still worlds apart from the dark web. That night, in the early hours of the morning, when Chen Guang was washing up and getting ready to go to bed, Xuelin knocked on the door. "Brother Guang, I found him. We're doing a surprise review. Do you want to attend the online review meeting?" Chen Guang's eyes lit up. So soon? So, he followed Xuelin to the command room. What appeared on the screen was a small dark room. A very haggard and flustered middle-aged man was handcuffed to an interrogation chair. Chen Guang asked, "This is the person who uploaded the video online?" "No, it's not him. We first used technical means to track the guy who uploaded the video. He's a very experienced hacker. The IP address has been transferred at least 5 times in the United States. We spent a lot of manpower and resources, and even got the help of Interpol to find him in the country. The hacker is in Denghai. We first got our colleagues from the security bureau there to control him, then dig out information about this person from his mouth. He was the one who sent the video to the hacker, and then let the hacker spread it on the internet." Chen Guang suddenly understood. "I see. Who is this guy? Why did he come to me for no reason?" As he spoke, the interrogation in the video had already begun. "We have enough evidence to prove that you first obtained the fake video that deliberately discredits China's senior leaders, and then instructed others to illegally spread it on the internet. Tell me, who instructed you to do this? Also, according to what we know, this video first appeared on a terrorist network. We have reason to believe that you're engaged in terrorist activities." Chen Guang didn't see the interrogator's face, but the person's voice sounded quite dignified. He should be a professional interrogator. The middle-aged man in the video shrank his neck slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just an unemployed person. I admit that I posted this video, but I really don't know what you mean by a terrorist organization's network. I just climbed over the wall and casually browsed some websites abroad, and then I saw this video. I don't believe it's true at all. I asked someone to upload it online, just because I thought it was fun." Bang! The sound of someone slamming the table could be heard from the surveillance camera. "Do you think we're idiots? You have no idea how serious what you've done is. If you don't make amends, I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" The interrogator didn't answer the middle-aged man's question. There was a rare silence in the video. There was only the occasional rustling of documents. "Okay, I admit it. On the surface, I'm indeed unemployed, but I'm actually employed by Mr. Song Mingyuan, the senior director of Tiansong Water Group. This video was also copied for me by him. At that time, Mr. Song didn't say anything. He just asked me to find a safe way to spread the video. The more impact it caused, the better. He even asked someone to send me $1 million in cash, and asked me to hire a professional. Very good. It seems that you've realized the seriousness of the matter. In fact, according to the information we have, you've entered the office of Tiansong Water Group more than 10 times this year. Actually, even if you don't say it, we can still find out. The interrogator in the video replied in a calm tone. On this end, Chen Guang already knew that there was no need to listen anymore. This was done by Song Mingyuan. He really thought that he was dead. Although he didn't know the purpose of doing this, he was sure that it wasn't for his own good. Song Mingyuan must be one of the people who put a bounty on him. He just didn't know how much he paid. Back in his room, Chen Guang received a call from Tang Ying. Chen Guang, I suspect that Song Mingyuan is also involved in the bounty on you. Tang Ying, who was at Moreland's Medical College in the United States, said. Chen Guang already had an answer in his heart, but he still played along with her and said, Why do you suddenly have this idea, Sister Tang Ying? He just called me and asked me to have dinner with him when I returned to China. He also asked me if I saw that video of you. Tang Ying explained. Chen Guang laughed. Isn't that normal? No, this isn't normal at all. Although it's spreading like wildfire on the internet. Neither your company nor the Judicial Department has made an official statement so far. Those of us who might know your whereabouts haven't been interviewed by the outside world. But I clearly feel that when he mentioned the video, his tone was clearly 100% sure that you're dead. This clearly doesn't make sense. Tang Ying said, stomping her feet angrily. This guy actually told me to restrain my grief and accept fate. What a joke. Chen Guang comforted her instead. It's okay. I'll look into it. I'm not a child now, and I have people under me. It's easy to find out. After hanging up, Chen Guang thought about it and decided to ask Shuelin to prepare a motorcycle for him. Now that he had found the culprit, Chen Guang had no reason to let him go free, regardless of whether Song Mingyuan was the main culprit or just a minor character. Well, Brother Guang, are you going to do it yourself? Why don't you just arrange for some people to arrest him? Shuelin asked, slightly puzzled. She felt that there was no need for Chen Guang to do so. However, Chen Guang grinned and replied, The Tiansong Water Utility isn't a small company. If someone else gets involved, there might be someone pleading for leniency for him. Otherwise, the Song family might even try to spend money to resolve this disaster. You know that I'm a soft-hearted person, and I can't move when I see money. That's not good. So in order to avoid any more trouble, I'd better do it myself and put an end to it. Chen Guang was still pretending to be dead, so it was not convenient for him to be seen by others. A motorcycle that could travel on mountain roads was, of course, the best choice. Song Mingyuan, who was immersed in the pleasure of revenge, had no idea that he was about to face a disaster. In order to celebrate, Song Mingyuan called a lot of friends to the Heaven and Earth Club to have fun. As his cousin, Chen Guang's other enemy, Zheng He would certainly appear. Brother Song, you called all of us to celebrate a good thing, but you didn't tell us why. That's not very nice. Song Mingyuan raised his glass happily. Hey, it's my treat. Don't talk nonsense. In short, everyone just relax today. I do have a good thing coming, but it's not convenient for me to tell you now. You'll know after a while. Could it be that Chen Guang is really dead? Is the video on the internet real? No one was a fool. Everyone knew about the conflict between Song Mingyuan and Chen Guang on MT Tangshan. Immediately, someone connected Song Mingyuan's smugness with the news on the internet. Song Mingyuan raised his eyebrows and pointed at his nose. Is it that obvious? Of course. But many people say that it's a rumor, and that the video is fake. Brother Song, you can't be so naive as to believe it, right? In the face of everyone's doubts, Song Mingyuan only put on a profound look, as if they didn't understand. The Buddha said, it can't be said, it can't be said. He was not such an arrogant person, but now that Chen Guang was dead and he had been very careful, it was impossible for anyone to guess that he was the one who did it. Moreover, it was a reward of 400 million yuan. He only had 20 million yuan in it, so no one would think that it was him. Maybe some people will doubt it, but I, Song Mingyuan, am not a small character. I can't just rely on someone's unproven guess. He had no reason to continue being cautious. Next to him, Zheng He felt a little complicated. He thought worriedly that Chen Guang was dead, but Wenwen, Jiang Yage and Jin Shiyue, his so-called confidants, would definitely not let it go. Zheng He coughed lightly, indicating for Song Mingyuan to restrain himself a little. Song Mingyuan understood, and didn't think much of it. He patted Zheng He's shoulder and whispered in his ear, "Don't be too nervous. You know, as long as Chen Guang is dead, everyone else is just a motley crew. As time goes on, no one will pay attention to him." Zheng He sighed. "I don't know why, but I keep feeling that something is wrong. You're thinking too much. I'm afraid you've been unlucky too many times with him in the past, so you're oversensitive." Just as this group of people was enjoying the party, Chen Guang's motorcycle was speeding on the national highway. He was not filled with anger, only an inexplicable indifference. He really didn't want to admit that he had changed after coming out of the killing world. Chapter 12-14. When he was with his family, he didn't feel that there was a problem. However, once he went out alone with murderous intent, Chen Guang realized that something in his heart had loosened. To be precise, it had disappeared. What had disappeared was none other than the innate sympathy humans had for their own kind. In the past, his hands weren't exactly clean. They were stained with blood. However, even though he had killed evil people with his own hands, there was still a faint but lingering compassion in his heart. Even if he had to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, he still had feelings for the plants in his heart. When some people did wrong, he might have been a good person in the past. It was just that his thoughts had gone astray at the wrong time. Or perhaps there were some reasons that he had no choice but to do so. Just like the assassins of the world of destruction, many of them were adopted when they were still young. They didn't have a correct outlook on life, and right from the start, although they deserved to die, they were pitiful. If God was fair when he created every life, then even those unforgivable killers were, in a sense, innocent. However, Chen Guang didn't truly forgive them. Perhaps each of them could find 10,000 reasons for their actions, 10,000 sudden emotions that caused them to make the wrong choice. Their lives deserved sympathy, but it didn't mean that they deserved forgiveness. This was the position that Song Mingyuan had in Chen Guang's heart. Before this, although he hated Song Mingyuan, his dislike for him was only limited to business and jealousy related to Tang Ying. Moreover, Chen Guang had never suffered a loss. The unlucky one was always Song Mingyuan. Therefore, although he had many conflicts with Song Mingyuan, Chen Guang didn't really care about him. Now that he was getting stronger, whether it was Tianguang Group or Morning Light Environmental Protection, with his influence in the political and military circles, Song Mingyuan would just be a laughable passerby. When Song Mingyuan truly understood his own strength, he knew that continuing to go against him was simply courting death. If he had followed the normal trajectory of his life, Song Mingyuan and his cousin, Zheng He, would have become two parallel lines. But now that things had come to this, since he had already done it, he had to pay the price. Stepping on the accelerator, Chen Guang sped up a little more. On the other side, Song Mingyuan, Zheng He and the others, who were partying all night in the club, unknowingly changed the topic to Chen Guang. "Brother Song, don't you think this is strange?" The video had been on the internet for a whole day, but why hadn't Chen Guang's people responded? His movie is still playing. I went to watch it. It's really good. He has to refute the rumors, right? Song Mingyuan pursed his lips. Refute rumors? That would have to be a real rumor to be refuted, right? In my opinion, this video is real. Chen Guang is already dead. That's impossible, right? That was Chen Guang. How could he die just like that? Couldn't this video be a special effect created by someone else to deliberately discredit him? Otherwise, it could be the leak of his movies. The people around them said in disbelief. Song Mingyuan shrugged. Anyway, I'm just guessing. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Don't you think that the people from Tianguang Group are being too quiet? It's very likely that Chen Guang is really dead, which is why they haven't made any moves yet. Let me give you an example. If I were to die one day, before the matter is properly investigated and my funeral arrangements are made, would my family announce my death to the public? They wouldn't. Song Mingyuan continued with a beaming expression. Chen Guang is the biggest shareholder of Tianguang Group and Chengguang Environmental Protection, and he's also the chairman. His every move has great implications, not to mention the news of his death. Don't worry, I'll still say the same thing. Wait for another 2 days and naturally, nothing will be hidden. Another person next to him took out his phone, pointed at it, and teased. These days, the media people are really bored out of their minds. The internet is all over the place writing about Chen Guang. There are actually people here saying that Chen Guang is trying to promote his variety show. Someone said that according to the Reuters photos, Chen Guang will appear in the next episode of his company's variety show, and the main theme will be the strongest body. Then, the purpose of releasing this video in advance is to warm up and hype up his lousy show? What a joke! Who would hype up something like that? Song Mingyuan glanced at him. Are you stupid? Who do you think you are? Why would you watch these media people's nonsense? It's a waste of time. This person was a little embarrassed by what Song Mingyuan said. My family always says that I didn't study well overseas, so they told me to read more news when I have time now. Then you have to watch something useful. Let's put it this way. According to what you said, if the media is trying to promote his show, then the scenes of Chen Guang jumping and dodging bullets in the video, and all kinds of sniping with his bare hands must be real. Then, the scene of his death must also be real. This can indeed prove that he is very good at fighting and has great strength. But what's the use of that? He's already dead. Who would want to watch a variety show about a dead person? Reminisce about him on the show? Then what if? I'm saying what if? Let's say that this video is made with computer special effects. But doesn't his show focus on real people and strange things? Even if he did it himself, he would have to film the real thing, right? There's no reason to use computer special effects to hype it up. As Song Mingyuan said this, he smugly patted his friend's head. So don't watch these useless things. It's a waste of time and even more embarrassing. Let me introduce you to a consulting company. What's it for? It's that the other party will selectively provide you with information and articles that they have verified and determined to be useful based on your profession and your requests. Isn't this the same as the self-media pushed by artificial intelligence? No, this is completely different. Just like the article you're reading, it's completely made up and doesn't make sense. It's all nonsense made up by some rather unprofessional self-media people. You've wasted a whole 5 minutes of your time reading this article, and now you're telling me about it. And you've wasted another 5 minutes of my time. Now that we're playing outside, it doesn't matter if we waste some time. But what if we're working? Then this time is very precious, and we can't afford to waste it like this. But we can't cut off information from the outside world. After all, there are countless business opportunities lurking in this, but we can't waste time. The purpose of the service provided by this company is more clear. First, they'll exclude that kind of false information. Then they'll summarize the important events in the relevant fields according to our needs, and send it to us in the most objective manner. All of it will be manually reviewed, which can maximize our time. That good? How much does it cost per month? 50,000. It's not expensive. I'll book it tomorrow. I say, if you two want to play, then play happily. Can you not talk about business at this time? Okay, I won't talk about it anymore. Song Mingyuan waved his hand and agreed with a smile. Ever since the news of Chen Guang's death was confirmed, he realized that he had become a different person. He had become more passionate, and he even began to care about time management, which he rarely cared about in the past. Brother, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first. There's an exam at school tomorrow. Next to him, Zheng He came over, wanting to say something but hesitating. He knew that Song Mingyuan would not take it seriously even if he said it, but he did not know what was going on tonight. He had been feeling a little uneasy, and he kept feeling very uneasy. Don't be funny. Are you kidding me? You still care about the exam? Why? Will the teachers in your school let you fail the exam? Not necessarily. As long as I take the exam, I definitely won't fail. But if I miss the exam, it'll be difficult. Speaking of which, this matter also has something to do with Chen Guang. Because of this guy, the management of privileged students in the school has become very strict. The more famous a person is, the more they will be watched. Okay, you're so troublesome. Back then I asked you to go abroad to study at a university. You can see the world and have fun. It was you who insisted that it was more comfortable in Wujing. Do you regret it now? Okay, then I'll walk you out. Okay, I happen to have something to talk to you about, brother. The two of them turned around and said goodbye to the people in the private room. Then, they walked out side by side. The two of them did not go straight outside. Instead, they turned a corner in the corridor and went straight to the fire escape. Zheng He lowered his voice and asked, "Brother, how are you so sure that Chen Guang is dead?" There were no outsiders here. Song Mingyuan chuckled and said in a low voice, "You should know that Chen Guang's house was blown up some time ago, right?" Zheng He swallowed his saliva. "I know. Did you get someone to do it? I did mention it to you before, but I didn't expect you to really do it." Song Mingyuan smiled meaningfully. "I did do it, but it wasn't me." "What do you mean?" "I did participate in the bounty for Chen Guang's death, but I only paid this much." Song Mingyuan put up 2 fingers. 20 million? USD. F***CK. Where did you get so much cash? Don't worry about where I got it. Anyway, I'll pay this part of the money. Part of the money? That's right. Chen Guang has too many enemies. Apart from me, there are at least a few other forces who participated in the bounty for him. This is the total amount of his bounty. Song Mingyuan put up another 4 fingers. 40 million US dollars? No, it's 400 million. Zheng He sucked in a cold breath. Even as the son of the chairman of New Radiance Corporation, he had never thought that someone would spend so much money to put a bounty on someone else's head. Just how big of a grudge is this? You don't have to worry about that. Anyway, this video was actually sent to me by someone else. The bounty has been completed, and Chen Guang is indeed dead. Zheng He was silent for a long time, unable to speak for a long time. A look of ecstasy appeared on his face. "I really admire you. But it's good that he's dead. It's good that he's dead. Of course. Why else do you think I called you guys here today? Isn't it to celebrate this? But brother, don't be too obvious when you're outside. Chen Guang's background is so complicated. I know that, but he's already dead. There's a saying that you have to remember. Tea cools when people leave is an unchanging truth, no matter how high a person's status is." "That's true." Zheng He nodded. "Then I'll go back first." "All right, now you feel at ease. I heard that you used to chase after a girl in school, and that you're related to him?" "Sigh, that's all in the past. It's the same with or without Chen Guang. That girl isn't suitable for me. By the way, that girl isn't simple. Her name is Wenwen. I have a photo of her here. You have to be careful of her. Be careful of her." "That's right. You have to be careful of her. That girl seems to know martial arts. Anyway, she's very powerful. A dozen big men can't even get close to her. She's also very hot-tempered. I'm afraid that if she confirms the news of Chen Guang's death, she'll go crazy and find trouble with every suspicious person." "Then she didn't find you?" "Not really. She hasn't appeared in school for a few days. I don't know where she went." "You're still talking about the past. Aren't you very concerned about others?" Sigh. As the two of them were whispering to each other, a cold voice suddenly came from behind them. "Are you two done talking?" The two turned at the same time and saw a familiar face in the dim light of the fire escape. Their mouths opened wider and wider. They probably wanted to scream ghost or something. However, Chen Guang reached out and tapped their necks with lightning speed. The two of them couldn't make a single sound. The two immediately turned around and wanted to push open the sliding door of the fire escape to escape. However, Chen Guang flicked his fingers repeatedly. 2 bolts of qi shot out from behind them and hit them squarely in the middle of their backs. Zheng He and Song Mingyuan felt their bodies go limp. They slumped to the ground like dough. Chen Guang looked down at the two of them. After about 5 seconds of silence, he said, "I'm really sorry. I'm not dead." Song Mingyuan's eyes widened. He couldn't understand what had happened at all. The dark web couldn't be lying. The video must be real. But why would Chen Guang appear in front of him? What the hell was going on? Something must have gone wrong somewhere. Song Mingyuan opened his mouth slightly. He really wanted to beg for mercy. Unfortunately, he could only make soft sounds in his throat. He couldn't say a word. Zheng He was calmer than him. His sixth sense told him that something was wrong. His right eyelid had been twitching nonstop in the private room. Looking at the expressionless Chen Guang, Zheng He suddenly recalled a memory that was about to dissipate. It was in the evening. He had mustered up his courage for a long time and tried to talk to the girl he liked, Wenwen. However, he had been infuriated by Chen Guang, who was standing beside Wenwen. At that time, he had only treated Chen Guang as an insignificant toad. Later on, he had even thought that he could find a few people to beat him up. That would be enough to make him back off obediently. However, he hadn't expected this kid to be so stubborn and unyielding. He could fight with his life on the line. Later on, he had found a martial arts expert in the school to cause trouble for him. However, he hadn't expected this guy to suddenly become an expert after not seeing him for a few days. After that, not only had he failed to woo Wenwen, but he had also annoyed her. She had even given him a verbal warning. Later on, he had bumped into him at the airport with Jiang Yage and Jin Shirihua. Jiang Yage, who had a powerful background, had stood up for him, and he had completely given up on the idea of being enemies with him. He had thought that he would have nothing to do with him from then on. He hadn't expected to run into him again because of his cousin. In fact, Zheng He hadn't expected things to turn out like this. Especially when his cousin Song Mingyuan had said that he wanted to find an assassin. He had even thought that he was just saying it out of anger. However, he hadn't expected him to really do it. Just now, when he had learned of Chen Guang's death, Zheng He still couldn't get rid of the joy in his heart. Although he might not have a chance to get Wenwen in the future, he had always felt the pleasure of revenge. But why now? Why was he standing here? What would he do to the two of us? Zheng He thought silently. He struggled hard, but he couldn't even move his fingers. He even thought to himself, if I hadn't come here today, would I have been able to stay out of this? However, how could there be so many ifs in this world? In the corridor of this club, a cold and gloomy aura emerged out of thin air, completely enveloping the hearts of the two cousins, Zheng He and Song Mingyuan. Chapter 12-15. Chen Guang didn't intend to waste any more time on these two. He didn't care if Zheng He was involved or not. In his eyes, these two brothers were one. Even if Zheng He didn't fork out the money, he definitely knew about this. Then, he would be considered Song Mingyuan's accomplice. In a sense, Chen Guang's guess was right. A long time ago, when Zheng He first discovered that Song Mingyuan and Chen Guang had met, he had half-jokingly suggested that they should just find a real professional to kill Chen Guang. But Zheng He didn't expect Song Mingyuan to take it seriously and actually do it. Not only that, but Song Mingyuan wasn't the only one who put a bounty on Chen Guang. Including others, the total bounty was as high as 400 million yuan. Moreover, Chen Guang and his family were deeply troubled. If only he hadn't made things difficult for him back then. If only he hadn't meddled in Song Mingyuan's affairs before he died. Zheng He still had this thought in his heart. Song Mingyuan didn't think so much. The moment Chen Guang appeared, he had already guessed his ending. He just couldn't understand why Chen Guang didn't die even though the bounty was already gone, and the video was 100% real. He even thought that this might be an illusion. Perhaps everything would return to normal after he woke up tomorrow. Looking at Chen Guang's large palm pressing on his forehead, Song Mingyuan gradually felt his breathing getting heavier and his heartbeat slowing down. All kinds of memories from his short life gradually surged into his mind. There were his naughtiness when he was young, his innocent youth, and the debauchery he enjoyed when he was studying abroad. Even more so, he returned to his family and participated in the management of the family business. All of these things flashed past his mind like a white steed passing through a crack. In the end, all his thoughts turned to his current state of extreme distress and exhaustion. How did he kill me? He had only pressed his hand on my body, but why did I feel as though all of my internal organs were being squeezed? Could it be that Chen Guang was the same as the rumors I'd heard before? That he had a legendary inner force that surpassed human understanding? But I've never heard of this kind of internal energy. This was even more powerful and terrifying than the kind of people my father had told me about. Those people could only use the so-called inner force to move faster, jump higher than ordinary people, run faster than ordinary people, and even use their palms to break bricks. However, I had never heard of anyone who could make someone's internal organs fail just by touching their palms. Expressionlessly, Chen Guang looked at Zheng He and Song Ningyuan, whose faces were getting paler and paler, and whose eyes were getting more and more terrified. There was no ripple in his heart. Finally, the two of them slowly closed their eyes, and their heartbeats completely stopped. Without any pause, Chen Guang turned around and left, his figure disappearing into the fire escape. 10 minutes later, he returned to an alley about 2 kilometers away from the clubhouse. He found the motorcycle from a pile of garbage and rode it away. With the help of an insider, Chen Guang had completely avoided all the surveillance of Skynet. Of course, it didn't matter even if he had been seen. With modern medical methods, it was impossible to find out how Song Ningyuan and Zheng He died. No matter how good a forensic doctor was, it would be the same. In the end, they could only conclude that the two brothers had done something crazy before, which eventually led to their sudden deaths. 3 hours later, he rode the motorcycle back to Lilai quietly. Xuelin hadn't slept all night. She waited for him to come back before reporting. "Brother Guang, there's news from Wujing. Song Ningyuan, the vice president of Tiansong Water Group, and Zheng He, the senior director of New Ray Group, both died suddenly." "When did the report come in?" 10 minutes ago. Chen Guang shrugged. "There's something wrong with the public security management in Wujing City. They died more than 2 hours ago, before it was reported. Well, it should be rectified." "Well, Brother Guang, it's said that the clubhouse temporarily suppressed the news for a while after they found out that the two were dead. Later, other people who were with them saw that the situation was not good and quietly released the news. The Song family and the Zheng family came to the clubhouse together. In addition, the clubhouse is under the jurisdiction of Director Wu Tong." Chen Guang said. "Ahem, then it's not the police's problem. It's the clubhouse's operator's fault. Let's not get involved in this mess." Chen Guang decisively restrained himself. He had almost rushed to the temple of the Dragon King by acting tough. After waiting for a while, Chen Guang fell into a deep sleep. The mess in Wujing had nothing to do with him. Except for himself, Xuelin and Xianqin, no one knew how Zheng He and Song Ningyuan died. It didn't matter even if they were suspected. No one could ever find any evidence. The next day, after Chen Guang gave the order, many relatives and friends who had temporarily lost their freedom because of the reward incident gradually relaxed their vigilance. Perhaps the hidden sentries still couldn't leave in a short time, but everyone could regain their freedom of movement. By right, Chen Guang should be rushing back to school to take the final exam at this time. But after thinking about it, he decided to cancel the exam first. He had a very good reason in his heart. Maybe one day the integration of the real world and the real world would be completely completed. He felt uneasy and couldn't leave. Unfortunately, Chen Guoli didn't buy it. Seeing that he refused to leave at home, he thought that he wanted to help rebuild the villa. So he chased after him and taught him a lesson. "You only know how to be sneaky all day long. How long have you not been to school? Do you think I don't know that there will be a final exam soon? You even want to avoid this? Why don't you find some connections to help you pass the exam? What if someone leaks it out? People will point at the backbone of the Chen family and say that I'm dishonest and that my family is sneaky." Chen Guang looked at his father helplessly. "Dad, aren't you putting the cart before the horse? Although it's said that the sky is clear after the rain, I still feel uneasy. There will be a final exam soon. But I have already applied for a makeup exam. It's the same if I take the makeup exam next semester. Don't you see that I'm reading now?" Saying that, Chen Guang also shook the textbook in his hand. It was an introduction to industrial water pollution control. "Really? Of course. That's fine. Building a house now costs about 300,000 yuan in advance. Give it to me, We didn't buy insurance. Are you kidding me? Who do you think we are? Why would we buy insurance with such little money? Isn't it embarrassing? I think, according to your financial thinking, even if our hot pot restaurant didn't have that incident, I'm afraid it would go bankrupt sooner or later. In fact, Chen Guang did not do nothing when he came to the county. He had already asked people to start investigating the Schultz family, Sanshin Group, and related personnel of Japan's financial groups. Although he could directly kill them and use mental cultivation to catch them and put them on trial, with his previous experience, he was not willing to take this risk easily. Every time he used mental cultivation, his mind would become extremely tired and dispirited. Who knows, the world might suddenly change, and if something went wrong, it would be too late for regrets. After 7 days, Chen Guang had almost finished the entire semester's curriculum by himself. Finally, there was a tip-off from outside, confirming that there was a problem with the Schultz family's financial flow. The amount was as high as $150 million. Chapter 12:16. He didn't feel relieved after the matter was confirmed. He still had to face the same problem. Should he go on this trip or not? The Schultz family was in Los Angeles. Chen Guang had 2 choices in front of him. He could either go to Los Angeles personally to find the person in charge of the Schultz family and send him on his way, or he could use someone else's help and order the Guangdong General Administration to send an expert to act on his behalf. The second method seemed easy, but Chen Guang couldn't make up his mind easily. Other than a few people, most inner force martial artists were only at the peak of skin force. Although they were much more powerful than ordinary people, they could still be killed by modern high-tech weapons. Foreign countries were not like domestic ones. No matter how big the incident was, it was still within the scope of one's own people. However, it was different on the other side of the ocean. It was not one's own territory. The Schultz family's status was not to be underestimated. A slight move in one part would definitely affect the rest. Although the dark web's bounty happened in the underground world, and ordinary people didn't know about it, it was no secret in the eyes of those at the top of the pyramid. Therefore, everyone in the world could guess that he had a grudge against the Schultz family. Now, in the eyes of others, he was already dead. If something happened to the Schultz family, others would think that it was most likely his subordinates who took revenge. Since Huaxia could develop special equipment that could deal with inner force martial artists, it was impossible that America, which was more technologically advanced, didn't have it. He had nothing to fear. But if other martial artists died because of him, Chen Guang wouldn't feel at ease. He was in a difficult position. He hated that he couldn't use God mode like before, and he didn't have the ability to split himself into 2. In the past few days, Tianguang Group, which had not responded for a long time, finally became the target of public criticism. Women was still on the air. Hi. My God. They were also in the midst of production and would resume broadcasting next week. The huge Tianguang Group acted as if nothing had happened. They didn't comment on the rumors that Chen Guang was dead. The result was that the calmer they appeared to be, the more they revealed themselves. In the first few days, there were self-media people who clarified on the internet, saying that it was impossible for Chen Guang to die so easily. But as time passed, these voices gradually disappeared, and more people felt that Chen Guang might really be dead. More people went to Gokyo University to look for Chen Guang's classmates, just to ask about him, but no one knew anything. They all said that they hadn't heard from him for a long time. Sun Xiaoxuan, Lin Jingwei, and the others who knew the inside story would never reveal it. There were even bold reporters who directly rushed to the Tianguang Group's headquarters in Wujing and blocked the door to ask about Chen Guang's whereabouts. The employees also knew nothing about it. As for the company's senior management, they all said that they had no comment. They didn't know either. Not only that, but there were even hardcore fans of Almighty Superman who simply called the police. Even Wu Tong received quite a number of police notifications. Chen Guoli, who originally planned to renovate his house, couldn't stand the disturbance, so he simply went into hiding again. Out of sight, out of mind. In the end, Chen Guang still went out. There was no other reason. After another day passed, the Sanshin Group's capital flow was also found out. Not only that, the person in charge of the Sanshin Group was also not in the country at this time, but in Luoyang City. Chen Guang didn't need to think to know that it was very likely that after the Sanshin Group participated, they guessed that the Schultz family was most likely an accomplice. For the purpose of benefits, the Sanshin Group decided to take the initiative to rope in the Schultz family. Then, the Sanshin Group and the Japanese consortium should be preparing to completely encroach on the resources in the photocatalyst field that he had painstakingly managed to operate. As he expected, Zhuo Jingxi, who was in Prince's laboratory, received a call from the Sanshin Group and the Japanese consortium at the same time, giving quite harsh conditions for cooperation. Zhuo Jingxi rejected them without hesitation, but things didn't end there. The other party seemed to have guessed from the beginning that Zhuo Jingxi wouldn't easily agree, so they gave all kinds of hints and warnings over the phone. Since the other party had already done this, Chen Guang felt that he couldn't wait any longer. It seemed that the fusion of the two worlds wouldn't be that fast for a while. Maybe if he moved fast, he could make it back in time after a long trip. After making up his mind, he immediately went out. This time, he found an expert in disguise from the headquarters to follow him. With this disguise technique, he could save a lot of inconvenience when moving abroad. 2 days later, Chen Guang, who was disguised as a middle-aged man, appeared at the Los Angeles airport hand in hand with a very beautiful middle-aged woman. "Mr. Zhong, let's go to the hotel to rest first." The middle-aged woman put half of her body on Chen Guang and said in a very sweet voice. Chen Guang slightly struggled and pushed the woman further away. "Okay, Yin, restrain yourself. We came out for business. Don't use those tricks on others on me." The woman named Yinyu's face slightly changed. She slightly retracted her body and said embarrassedly, "I'm sorry, it's a professional habit." Chen Guang sighed. "I know. Otherwise, I would have thrown you out a long time ago." He had no choice but to bring along the eldest disciple of Moon Sunflower sect, Yinyu. This Moon Sunflower sect was a sect that mainly trained female assassins in ancient times. It was quite famous in history. Although it was now in decline, it was still one of the 27 sections. It was especially skilled in disguise, concealment, and assassination. At that time, Chen Guang had mentioned it casually. It just so happened that the eldest disciple of Moon Sunflower sect, Yinyu, was also happy to come, so he brought her out. He didn't think that this girl, who was in her late 20s, would be so open-minded. First, she disguised Chen Guang as a middle-aged man. Chen Guang had originally asked her to disguise herself as a young woman and pretend to be his daughter, but she insisted on disguising herself as a middle-aged beauty. She even said that disguising themselves as husband and wife would make it easier for them to move around. It would also be convenient for them to stay in the same room when they were outside, and it would be convenient for them to touch up their makeup. Chen Guang felt that what she said made sense, so he agreed casually. But now, when they were in China, she was quite restrained, perhaps because she was afraid of being returned. But ever since she got on the plane, she began to be quite restless. She had all kinds of fun in front of Chen Guang, the well-deserved master of Wulin. If Chen Guang was still the virgin he used to be, he might have fallen into her trap without being able to resist. But now, he was no longer the ignorant man he used to be. He didn't lack girls by his side, and he had things on his mind. Besides, Yinyu looked quite impure, so she was really not his type. The two of them went straight to the hotel they had booked in advance. Chen Guang boarded the plane under the pseudonym Zhongjun. He planned to sneak out later. Mr. Zhong is here to touch up your makeup." After being threatened by him once, Yinyu obediently restrained herself. She no longer used the methods she used on other men on Chen Guang, but there was still a hint of seduction in her eyes. Chen Guang was distraught. He said, "If you want to touch up your makeup, then touch up your makeup. Just control your eyes a little. Sai, why do you have to do this? I promised to give everyone in the headquarters a lesson. Whether you do it or not, I treat everyone equally. You really don't have to do this." Yinyu stuck out her tongue again when her thoughts were exposed. This time, she had completely returned to normal. "Oh, I got it. No matter what, the moon sunflower sex disguise technique was no small matter. It was fine even if it was washed off with water. After touching up his makeup, Chen Guang went out to scout out the situation. Being abroad was different from being in China. He tried his best not to use any communication devices. He had to rely on himself for everything. The hotel they were staying at was about 5 kilometers away from the Schultz family's manor. Chen Guang didn't find it tiring. He put his hands in his trouser pockets and strolled in that direction. Chapter 12:17. It hadn't been a long time since he last came to Luoyang City. This bustling city hadn't changed at all because of his visit. The only difference was that there were no longer posters with his handsome face hanging on the streets and alleys. Instead, there were posters of other people, such as Gillette's razor, or someone's new movie or play. What Chen Guang had done in the past had indeed turned the bustling Luoyang City upside down for a period of time. But time and the city had worked together to erase the deepest traces. The only thing that reminded Chen Guang of the time when he came to Luoyang City with women was probably the poster of Emma Watson. After acting in Romeo and Juliet with Chen Guang, little Watson's acting skills seemed to have improved out of thin air. She was now more and more famous in the European and American drama industry. From a rising star in a small circle, she had now become the face of a drama. She deserved it. Chen Guang was never stingy with his generosity. He was also willing to let those who were willing to help him benefit from it, whether it was intentional or not. Unfortunately, he did not have much time now. Otherwise, Chen Guang would have liked to see Emma Watson's performance. But he decided not to do so now. Chen Guang, who had disguised himself as a middle-aged man, did not have to worry about being recognized at all. However, he still habitually guarded against the surveillance cameras on the street. No one would believe it, but there were fewer surveillance cameras on the streets of Luoyang City than in Wujing City. It was quite easy for Chen Guang to avoid them. No wonder the crime rate in America was so high. But it was not as if Chen Guang had never encountered something that troubled him. In order to avoid the surveillance cameras, he accidentally walked into an alley. He had only taken a few steps when a few very strong black men jumped out from a small door next to the alley. "Hey, old Asian man, leave your phone and wallet behind and get lost. This is not a place you should be." The black man standing at the front was shaking a long dagger in his hand. His waist was bulging, and he was probably carrying other things with him. Bang! Clang! Dong! Dong! 10 seconds later, Chen Guang clapped his hands and left, leaving a few of his buddies moaning on the ground. The dagger was broken into 3 pieces, and the guns they had hidden at their waists were scattered everywhere. Chen Guang whistled and cursed in his heart. Was it because his disguise was too simple and honest? What era was it? How could he still be robbed? Someone actually dares to rob me? Do you really know how to write the word death? Well, they can't write Chinese. Originally, he thought that the Schultz family would be heavily guarded at this time. But after arriving here, he found that was not the case. The huge gate of the manor was filled with cars and people, and the atmosphere was even a little festive. Chen Guang didn't approach him rashly. Instead, he found a cafe nearby, ordered a latte and sat down. He then asked the waiter to bring him a copy of Hitchcock's suspense stories, and pretended to read it. No one noticed that most of Chen Guang's attention was on the people going in and out of the Schultz family's manor. He saw several Asian faces. These people looked quite wretched. They bowed their heads when they walked, as if everyone was their boss. Needless to say, they were people from the Sanshin group. In addition, some people who looked like doctors came out from time to time. They should be the psychiatrists hired by the Schultz family to treat the young Schultz. Chen Guang couldn't help but snicker. Are you kidding me? You're going to cure the guy that I made crazy? Then I, Chen Guang, should go home and plant sweet potatoes. After sitting for an hour or so, he got up and left. This was the last time he confirmed his guess. There was no need to hesitate anymore. The Schultz family was indeed involved in this matter. Old Schultz had come out for a short time to see off a well-known brain doctor in the United States. When the doctor left, he was frowning. Obviously, he couldn't do anything about Schultz's condition. Old Schultz didn't get the result he wanted, and he looked gloomy. However, After his secretary came over and said something, old Schultz smiled as he walked back, as if he had heard something good. 5 minutes later, Chen Guang received an internal notification from Lu Xiaoliang. Lu Xiaoliang had just called to report that America's cinemas had gone crazy and requested for Woman to be removed. Although Women had passed its peak, the drop in the box office was still within a controllable range. The daily box office was still more than 5 million, and the drop was getting slower. Many performing arts students and people who were interested in the art of film became the main consumers. They watched the movie 10 times or even 20 times. Because of this, it was understandable that the screening rate was lowered. However, Women could challenge the record of the longest screening period in North America, which was 3 months. This was a historical record for Chinese films. More importantly, the longer the movie stayed in the cinema chain, the more money they could make. Chen Guang didn't reply to the message, but it didn't take long for the inside information to be updated again. It was confirmed that the Schultz family had taken the initiative to contact several companies that controlled the largest cinema chains in North America, hoping that they would stop showing Women. In fact, for these cinema chains, it didn't make any difference whether they stopped showing the movie or not. Now that Women had passed its peak, it didn't matter who the movie was. If nothing had happened to Chen Guang, these cinema chains might not have been willing to offend him. However, the fact that he was beheaded had almost become an open secret. Since he was already dead, they didn't need to care about his feelings. Chen Guang didn't need to ask anyone else. Combining the two things, he guessed that was what old Schultz's secretary had just told him. He couldn't help but sneer. Did they really think that I was dead? The terrible thing wasn't over yet. After Chen Guang returned to the hotel and had dinner, Zhuo Jingxi, who was in Prince, called him. She said that things had changed again. Although her personal safety wasn't a problem under Auntie May's protection, Prince's laboratory was obviously disloyal. Many new faces appeared outside the laboratory. Not only that, but Prince's laboratory also changed their previous happy cooperation and began to spy on Zhuo Jingxi's experimental process more wildly and arrogantly. If she hadn't asked people to keep an eye on the laboratory 24 hours a day, Prince would have quietly sneaked in to steal the samples. In the face of $100 billion market, there was no real morality in this world. In the past, due to Chen Guang's identity and influence, he was extremely powerful both in and outside of Huaxia. Whether it was Prince's laboratory, the major photocatalyst partners, or the cinema chains, they all followed the rules. But now that something had happened to Chen Guang, many of the tricks hidden in the dark had been revealed. Chen Guang felt that it was very likely that Prince's laboratory wasn't just eyeing the samples. In other people's hearts, Teacher Zhuo was the one who had the 5 god-level formulas. Not only that, but she also had knowledge that surpassed the times. Therefore, Prince's real goal should be to keep Teacher Zhuo and put her under house arrest. Behind this matter wasn't just this well-known laboratory. It was impossible to say that without the tacit consent of the people in power in America, standing in front of the window and watching the slowly setting sun outside, Chen Guang sighed. You guys forced me to do this. Human nature is really terrible. Chapter 12:18. In the past few days, the staff of Tianguang Group had all left Los Angeles for New York. This was an order from Chen Guang. Luoyang City was the base camp of the Schultz family. He could not rule out the possibility that the Schultz family would continue to cause trouble for his company's employees after he died. Therefore, it was better to avoid trouble. Before the dust settled, Chen Guang asked the staff of Tianguang Group to temporarily evacuate Luoyang City. He did not want to give the Schultz family any opportunity. In New York, Tang Xiaokai's network was very wide. He could cover both the legal and illegal forces. The Chinese forces in Chinatown were not weak either, so their safety was more guaranteed. However, what Chen Guang was most worried about now was not the staff of Tianguang Group, but Zhuo Jingxi, who was protected by Auntie May and several special elites. Although there were plenty of people on the other side, a tall tree attracted the wind. He could only blame the things he had left for Zhuo Jingxi were too eye-catching. He felt that they were insignificant. But in the eyes of others, Just 5 photocatalyst formulas were worth a rich oil field. Once this resource was obtained by any technology company, it could even create a trust company comparable to Rockefeller. It would have an absolute global monopoly for at least 20 to 30 years. Who would not be tempted by this kind of resource? Not to mention America, which had always occupied a dominant position in various fields of technology. If it was just a civilian force, Zhuo Jingxi's safety would not be too worried. However, once it involved America's political power, even with Auntie May's protection, it might not be safe. Teacher Zhuo's life might not be in danger. It was more likely that he would be placed under house arrest. However, Auntie May and the other special elites would definitely die. I really have to hurry up. With this thought in mind, Chen Guang said goodbye to Yin. He first went to the window and looked down. Then he quietly snuck out of the hotel room. If a hotel security guard happened to see him go out at this time, and then looked at the surveillance, he would find something particularly strange. There was clearly a person walking out, but there was no image in the surveillance at all. This was because Chen Guang had used the flowing light shadow technique he had learned from the realm of Zhenwu. He had spread out his internal energy in a special way and arranged it around his body so that the light around him would be refracted at a certain angle. Naturally, there was nothing in the picture taken by the camera at the end of the aisle. However, this move wasn't that bugged. It wasn't true invisibility. Once the light's entry point changed, it wouldn't work. If it encountered a patrol, it would look no different from an ordinary person. The experts of Jianghu in the world of true martial used this trick to deal with the sentries that were located far away from them. The others would look at them from the same position, and their line of sight wouldn't shift. This flowing light shadow technique was very effective. In modern times, this move was even more useful. Using it to deal with surveillance cameras was like a divine skill tailor-made for them. This was something that Chen Guang had just dug out from his brain. You really couldn't blame him. He had learned too many things. Even a computer would need time to search the hard disk, let alone a human brain. In addition, there was another reason that prompted him to make this decision. Damn, this was actually the 28th floor. From here, it was all smooth tempered glass walls. He couldn't jump or climb. It was a trap. Using the same method, Chen Guang made his way down the fire escape to the ground floor. He even encountered 3 property inspectors along the way, but they were all avoided by him. In the end, Chen Guang stuck to the bottom of a Land Rover and left the hotel through the underground garage. Although he didn't have much experience as a special agent, Chen Guang was still the boss of the Guangding General Headquarters. Before this trip, he had crammed a lot of knowledge for himself. He had also asked the experts in the bureau for advice. Yin, who was also good at this kind of thing, was with him. As long as he was serious, he could make things foolproof from the beginning. First, everyone thought he was dead. Second, once his whereabouts and news were leaked, it would leave such a signal in the Americans. The high-level officials of Huaxia personally massacred the Americans' wealthy family. It might cause international disputes on a certain level, and it would cause a lot of trouble for the old men. At this time, the Schultz Manor was brightly lit. This was the 3rd consecutive day that the Schultz family had held a cocktail party. At the cocktail party, people exchanged toasts and whispered to each other. Old Mrs. Schultz was holding her husband's hand as they walked around the garden, greeting the guests from time to time. Mrs. Schultz's brows were tightly furrowed. Anyone could see that she was in a bad mood. When the two of them walked to the corner of the garden, an argument finally broke out. Red, why are we wasting time on this meaningless thing at this time? Shouldn't we continue to think of ways to treat Coleman? That's enough. Shut up. Do you think I haven't thought of a way? I see at least 8 doctors and 7 medical experts a day. Everyone is thinking of a way. I've used all my connections to try to contact everyone I can. In the whole world, other than the Huaxia brain and psychiatric experts. Maybe only the aliens haven't received my people's calls. But is it useful? Although what you said is the truth, it's only been a month. We can't give up on Coleman so easily. Did I say to give up on him? Then what are you doing? Why are you still holding a cocktail party? I'm taking revenge. What do you mean? That Huaxia man made Coleman like this. Will I let him go so easily? Isn't he already dead? But his family is still alive, and his company is still earning dollars in the United States. If we do nothing, sooner or later, the forces he left behind will become stronger and stronger. The Huaxia people won't let it go. So I have to destroy them completely and not give them any chance. But what does this have to do with the cocktail party? The Huaxia people have a very complicated background. His death hasn't been completely announced yet. But this is like a buried bomb that can explode at any time. When that happens, what awaits us will be crazy revenge. Crazy revenge? The Huaxia military will send agents to Los Angeles to cause trouble for us? That won't happen. This is the United States. The Huaxia people can't do whatever they want. They have to care about the international impact. Then we don't have to care. But once our people, or our family's business, leave American soil, we will have to face a terrible threat. So now I have to bring more people on board. This way, we can confuse others and let the Schultz family form a community of interests with more people. Our real goal isn't to make profits, but to expand our network and turn our former friends into allies. Do you understand? After receiving the video from the dark web, old Schultz started his counterattack. So far, it seemed to be working well. First, he had to drive Chen Guang's forces out of American soil. To make a force no longer a threat, the easiest way was to make them poor. In Schultz's opinion, money was equal to power. There was no such thing as absolute friendship in this world, only absolute interests. As long as Chen Guang's family ran out of money, at least they wouldn't be able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a bounty like he did. Of course, even if that really happened, Schultz wasn't too afraid. Most of the world's top killers had gone crazy, and the rest of the small fry might not be a threat to the Schultz family. In addition, one of the guests at the banquet was the deputy director of the FBI. Next, the FBI would strengthen their investigation and control of the dark web. They might not be able to catch the hidden website operators, but it would be good to make them more restrained. Old Schultz's counterattack was comprehensive, but he missed one point. He didn't expect that Chen Guang wasn't dead and had come to Los Angeles to take his head. When Chen Guang arrived at the Schultz manor, it was already past 9 at night. The place was still noisy. The older generation was discussing in the conference room, and the younger generation was having a party in the banquet hall of another building. Coleman Schultz's younger brother, Randolph Schultz, was in charge of greeting the guests. He didn't seem to be in a good mood. Many people guessed that he might be secretly happy about his brother's misfortune. After all, it meant that the entire Schultz family's wealth belonged to him. But that wasn't the case. The two brothers were very close, and 30 of the $150 million on the bounty had been contributed by him. Randolph, don't be sad. Your brother will get better. A beautiful supermodel came up and comforted him. Randolph smiled. I hope so. Okay, you guys have fun. I'm going to see my brother. About 20 meters away from the window, under the bushes, Chen Guang was looking at Randolph Schultz with a pair of black eyes. The two brothers were roughly 50 to 60% similar in appearance, so Chen Guang could recognize them with a single glance. Relying on his half-baked lip-reading skills, he barely managed to read Randolph's words. So Chen Guang decided to secretly follow Randolph Schultz. Chen Guang thought that they would hide the elder Schultz in a very secluded place. He didn't expect Randolph Schultz to come out of the house and go straight to the two-story bungalow next to it. Chen Guang used flowing light and shadow, and when the guard turned his head for a moment, he lightly tapped the ground and leaped onto the balcony. Coincidentally, the floor-to-ceiling window was open, so he slipped into the room and hid behind the curtain. Heavy breathing came from the front. Chen Guang slightly opened the curtain and saw Coleman Schultz, who was tied up with ropes. Ever since he was forced to make a deal with her, this guy had completely gone mad. Wait, what I said is a little ambiguous. Forget it, it doesn't matter. This guy is already a dead man. The door opened, and Chen Guang flashed back behind the curtain again. It was Randolph Schultz who walked into the ward. Chen Guang wasn't in a hurry to make a move. He wanted to hear what Randolph had to say. Brother, I will avenge you. Damn, I'm already dead. Who are you going to take revenge on? We know where Chen Guang's family is. I won't let them go. F***ck. This kid is capable. He has dreams, pursuits, and courage. I also know that the Chinese Chen Guang has a lot of women. I will get them all. And then let them taste the wrath of the Schultz family. Chen Guang couldn't control his urge to grind his teeth. I will make all of Chen Guang's female family members become B. Fine. Master Guang didn't need to wait for him to finish. B. Do you think I don't know? I'm a B. I'll kill Bill. His figure flashed, and he appeared behind Randolph Schultz like lightning. Randolph only saw a shadow pass by the corner of his eye, and then he felt a chill on the back of his neck, as if someone had placed an ice cube on his neck. He tried to raise his hand, but it was futile. Then he felt his eyelids getting heavier, and his head getting heavier. The world in front of him quickly turned dark. Kid, you are very ambitious, but it's not very realistic. If you want to achieve your dreams, you must first be alive. Randolph heard this voice before he died. Although he had never seen Chen Guang in person, he felt a sense of familiarity. This was not the first time he had watched many videos related to Chen Guang with hatred. But wasn't he already dead? I know what you're thinking, but it's meaningless. I hope you'll be a good person in your next life. Goodbye. His hand that was holding the back of Randolph's neck shook slightly, and 5 extremely destructive internal forces gushed out of his 5 fingers and blasted into Randolph Schultz's body. Therefore, many things in this world were made up of countless coincidences. Even if Randolph really hated Chen Guang to the core, if he hadn't coincidentally decided to take a look at Coleman's room at this time and said his innermost thoughts when he thought there was no one else around, Chen Guang might not have taken his life. 5 minutes later, Chen Guang left the house and returned to the manor. The meeting outside was still going on, and the hall where old Schultz and the others held the meeting was still brightly lit. Chen Guang leaned against the window of the meeting hall and listened for a while. A cold expression appeared on his face. All right, only old Schultz, his wife, and the people from Sanshin Group were left inside. They were currently discussing how to deal a deeper blow to Tianguang Group and Chengguang Environmental Protection, which had their roots in China. They even expanded the scope of their attack to Tang Zhao's foundation. In addition, Sanshin Group was also certain that Zhuo Jingxi would not be able to return to China. Their plan was very good, but unfortunately they had met Chen Guang. Early the next morning, a shocking piece of news suddenly exploded around the world. The first director and general manager of Sanshin Group, as well as the head of the Schultz family, who held a high position in the global aviation industry, had mysteriously died. There were no signs of fighting at the scene, and there were no wounds on the bodies of the dead. They were not poisoned, and there was no suffocation. No one knew what exactly happened, but these people had died silently in the Schultz manor. It was like a curse from hell, and it sent chills down everyone's spine. As for Chen Guang, he had already changed his name to Zhongjun and boarded a plane to Japan's capital. Chapter 12:19. Wasida's team wanted to obtain the photocatalyst technology, but they were rejected by Chen Guang. Furthermore, they were completely excluded. Chen Guang thought this was just a normal business decision. He didn't expect them to be so crazy. Photocatalysis was just one of their many research directions. Perhaps they had invested hundreds of millions of dollars in this field, but the competition in scientific research had always been the winner takes all. Unless they could get the sympathy of the winner and were willing to cooperate with each other to share part of the technology, the loser would often lose everything. But even so, there were countless scientific research institutions in the world competing in the same or similar projects all the time. But there were usually only 1 or 2 winners in the end. Others would either lose all their investments in the early, middle, and later stages, or helplessly continue to push forward with their own research and development, taking out products and technologies that were not as good as others to drink the leftovers. Most of the time, the leading companies would still be willing to share certain benefits. After all, promoting a new technology and product was different in different countries around the world. Cooperating with local technology companies was the easiest and most profitable way. Even if the leading companies refused to cooperate, The lagging companies could still use national boundaries as barriers to occupy a relative market in their own land. Because of this, Chen Guang slightly underestimated the backlash from Sanshin Group and the Japanese consortium. Sitting on the plane, listening to the conversation of the Japanese people next to him, he finally understood the reason. The two people next to him were talking about himself and photocatalysis. These two people seemed to be professors at Japanese universities, and they were very familiar with the progress in the global science and technology field. The reason why these two forces were willing to take the risk was because of Chen Guang's absolute lead in the field of photocatalysis. Unlike other scientific research competitions, the 5 God-level formulas he took out were too far ahead of others. No one could see any hope of turning the tables. Even the tried and tested barriers in other fields were meaningless. No company that produced water pollution could resist the temptation of these 5 photocatalysts. The cost control that this once-and-for-all technology could bring was enough to make everyone go crazy. Although it would be very expensive to purchase the materials for the first time. After the adoption of these new products, the entire sewage treatment process would be greatly simplified. Whether it was energy consumption, drug consumption, labor costs, or even the construction costs in the new process treatment process, they would all undergo earth-shaking changes. It was the nature of businessmen to pursue profits. Unless there was a policy that completely violated the law of the market, no one in the world would be able to resist these 5 formulas, and the national barriers would completely disappear. As the two companies that were completely excluded by Chen Guang, they would completely lose. Therefore, Sanshin Group and the Japanese consortium finally chose the only way out. Unfortunately, they failed. At this point, Sanshin Group had paid the price. The strange death of their leader would make them a mess. Now they had no time to care about what was happening in the outside world. When Chen Guang stood in front of the world again, people in Sanshin Group might have doubts, but they wouldn't do anything. Maybe they would even pray that the terrible curse would not continue to spread to them. After a day of work, Yamada Hideho dragged his tired body back to his home on the 9th floor of the Capitol building in the center of Tokyo City. This was a duplex apartment with a floor area of nearly 300 square meters. This kind of house might not be very luxurious, but in this area, in this building, this type of apartment determined the value of this house to be close to 80 million renminbi. People who were qualified to live in this building were either rich or powerful in Japan. Some people might say that not living in a villa was not a hero, but that was pure bullshit. Only God knew how expensive a house in Tokyo City was. Yamada Hideho was the eldest son of the chairman of Yamada Corporation and the current executive president of the corporation. His identity was one of the top people in the world. And Yamada Corporation was the main sponsor of Waseda Photocatalyst Laboratory. If Waseda could produce results, then Yamada Kai would be the biggest beneficiary. They had the highest proportion of ownership of the patent, and they could enjoy the economic benefits brought by the transformation of the results. Of course, if Waseda's research results were destroyed, the nearly $700 million that Yamada Kai had invested in it would go down the drain. Losing their investment was not the most devastating part. Now that the whole world knew that photocatalyst technology could be called an epoch-making new field, what they lost was the future. Although many people still thought that this field was slightly metaphysical, it was hard to say whether it was true or not. But in the end, it was because the relevant technology on the market was not mature, and the catalytic reaction conditions were too harsh. After the businessmen got the half-baked technology, they exaggerated it to make huge profits. In the end, many people thought that the so-called photocatalyst was a scam, but real scholars knew that things were not as simple as ordinary people thought. It was not that there were no powerful photocatalysts, but the production cost was too high, and the effect could not reach the point where people could ignore the cost. But judging from the technical results revealed by Zhuo Jingxi, the person in charge of the newly established Morning Light Environmental Protection, the formula in her hands could reach the point where it could ignore the cost, and she had already developed a mature industrial production process. She was even currently conducting industrial production in the laboratory, and it would soon be put into use. The impact of this on the entire industry was self-evident. If Morning Light Environmental Protection completed the entire process in the current state that they had announced, then the Waseda Photocatalyst Laboratory, that was fully sponsored by Yamada Corporation, would definitely become cannon fodder. Therefore, Yamada Hideho made the decision to fund a bounty on the real person behind Morning Light Environmental Protection, Chun Guang, and his family. He even expanded the scope of the bounty to all of his close friends. Of course, everything was a cover. The ultimate goal was still to kill Chun Guang, and then encourage those in power in America to get their hands on the photocatalyst. With the relationship between Japan and the United States, as well as Yamada Kai's network, as long as the owner of the technology became the United States, they would definitely be entitled to a share of the wealth. This way, Waseda, which had been excluded from the circle, could be reborn, and Yamada Kai would not be left empty-handed. Previously, they had succeeded, but Yamada Hideho did not feel relaxed at all. There was still a lot of work to be done. He had even booked a flight ticket to Washington in advance. It was 3 days later. However, this morning, news of the death of the old Schultz's family suddenly came from the other side of the Pacific Ocean. At the same time, another ally, the person in charge of Sanshin Group, was also killed. Yamada Hideho was confused and terrified. He did not know what he should do next. That night, before he went home, there were actually hidden sentries all over the Imperial Capitol building. He could not be sure if the heavy losses of the Schultz family and Sanshin Group were the revenge of Chun Guang's men. However, his instinct told him that he had to do something. It was very likely that he would be the next one to be cursed. Not only him, but the old house of the Yamada family, where Yamada Hideho's father, Yamada Masaichi, lived, was also on guard. At 8:30 that night, Chun Guang officially stepped onto the shiny floor of the East Capitol Airport. The moment he walked out of the ferry, he saw at least 8 hidden sentries in the hall not far away. These people were scrutinizing everyone who got off the plane. Chun Guang took the initiative to hold Inyu's arm, as if nothing had happened. Inyu leaned towards Chun Guang again, and pressed her full breasts on Chun Guang's arm. The expression on her face was very sweet, but her heart was calm. She really could not get excited. Only she, who was leaning close to Chun Guang, could understand that at this moment, the heart of the former director of the Guangdong General Administration was so cold that it made people shiver. Chapter 12:20. Mr. Zhong, are we going to stay here first, or are we going to walk around Tokyo? It's rare to come here. It's a pity not to see the scenery here. As the two walked out of the airport hand in hand, Inyu, who was leaning on Chun Guang, suggested casually. Chun Guang thought for a moment. Let's walk around, go to Shinjuku and see Kabukicho. You men only know how to go to these romantic places all day long. What do you know? This is the biggest feature of Japan. This is the pillar of other people's industry. I came here as an international friend. Of course, I have to spread the prestige of the Chinese people. Go, 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 go. If you talk too much, get the hell out of my hotel. Inyu shook Chun Guang's arm and said coquettishly, Okay, you're the boss. You have the final say. I know I'm wrong. Although Inyu had disguised herself as a middle-aged woman, she still had a pretty face and a charming figure. Her appearance at this time was really a bit pitiful. Chun Guang's face was seduced, his heart was calm, but the passers-by felt that he was too much. How could he be so fierce to a beautiful woman? At least you know what's good for you. Chun Guang proudly straightened his neck, like a nouveau riche. After that, the two casually took a taxi and went straight to Shinjuku. Just after the two left, the short man who was standing on the side of the road with them anxiously waiting for a taxi suddenly walked back, took out his phone, and made a call. It's not these two. Are you sure? This man and woman just happened to fly from Los Angeles to Tokyo today. The most suspicious. I'm sure they are not a problem. The man should be a rich man. The woman is his female secretary or something. These two have already taken a taxi to Shinjuku, saying that they are going to Kabukicho. They got in Kawaguchi's car. If there is any abnormality, Kawaguchi will report. Very good, Kitajima. You arranged well. Continue to do your job. After the matter is over, your credit will be recorded. You will become a level 5 member of our Yamada group. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Takahashi. Chen Guang and Inu didn't stay idle in the taxi. Ever since the two of them said that they were going to Shinjuku, the taxi driver became especially enthusiastic. He even introduced the two of them to the traditional restaurants he was familiar with in broken English. It was said that they could even find famous teachers from home and abroad, just that the prices were a little higher. Chen Guang listened with great interest. He also used his broken English to converse with him in various ways. He talked about Muto-sensei, Matsushima-sensei, and then lamented over Makura-sensei's retirement. He then talked about Ohashi-sensei, who had suddenly fallen off the pedestal, and finally Hattori-sensei, who had been popular for many years and was still considered an outstanding talent. Chauffeur Kawaguchi was furious at Ohashi-sensei's depravity. He felt that her behavior had tarnished his many years of beautiful memories and hurt his heart. On the other hand, Chen Guang expressed that infantrymen were more popular in China. Cavalry might have a hazy beauty, and the standard of knights might be higher than infantrymen. But for the majority of the Chinese spectators, the close-quarters combat of the sword and shield warriors was the most enjoyable. The old driver Kawaguchi asked Chen Guang how much it cost to buy DVDs in China. Didn't he hear that these things were banned in China? Chen Guang chuckled. It's better for Japanese friends to take clothes. In this world, there's a tool called a network drive or magnetic links. At the very least, you can download it. If that doesn't work, you can still ask for help from Tieba. At the very least, you can find vanilla pomegranate. It was free of charge. The old driver Kawaguchi cried on the spot and swore that he must go to China one day. Not for anything else, but for the Huahua internet world that Chen Guang had described for him. After all, the overseas publication of infantry could not be found in Japan. Even if it was found, it could not be downloaded. Chen Guang patted his chest and said, "My friend, just come. I'll give you 2 TB portable hard drives." When the two got out of the car, the old driver Kawaguchi took out a gilded card from the toolbox in the front passenger seat and stuffed it into Chen Guang's hand enthusiastically. "Mr. Zhong, the manager of this shop is my junior high classmate. Tell him that you are a Chinese friend of Kawaguchi Ningyun. He will prepare the best service for you. If you are lucky, you can even meet Ms. Asoyuki in the shop." Looking at the taxi speeding away, Inu rolled her eyes at Chen Guang. "What were you two talking about just now? I can understand every word, but I don't know any of these names." Chen Guang only laughed. "You don't understand. You really don't understand. As the eldest disciple of Yuankuei sect, your business skills still need to be improved. All right, I'll cram on this knowledge when I get back. Oh yes, there was no need for you to talk so much with the driver just now, right?" Chen Guang shook his head. "Can't you tell? He is a member of the Yamada Kai, and we only managed to escape their surveillance now. So are we going to the custom shop now?" I don't really want to go to the pederast." Chen Guang patted Inu's head. "Save it. I thought you were going to look for Yamada Hideo." "Ah, that's not what you meant." Chen Guang lowered his head and fiddled with his phone. "What do you think? It will take an hour to walk from here to the Capitol building in Shinjuku. If I'm quick, I should be able to reach the building in 15 minutes. What about me? Let's go to this custom shop." Chen Guang shook the gilded card in his hand. "Ah." Inu was stunned. Glancing at Su Tao, Chen Guang responded, "There's nothing too deceitful in war, understand." "What are you planning to do? You'll understand when we get to the custom shop. Why are you talking so much?" Inu was a special talent from the underworld. There were pros and cons. The pros were that the skills she knew were beyond the reach of ordinary people. The cons were that compared to real agents, she was too talkative and not obedient. On the other hand, after Kawaguchi sent Chen Guang off, he immediately gave a call to the head of the Yamada group, Mr. Takahashi, and gave a brief report on their conversation along the way. "Mr. Takahashi, there's no way this Chinese guy is a problem. I swear on my honor that he's not a top assassin, and he's definitely not Chen Guang's friend. He's just an ordinary tourist, and he's familiar with our culture. I didn't expect that even though he's a middle-aged man, he would know the names of all the actresses I mentioned. If he didn't spend a lot of time on this, he wouldn't be able to do this. Alright, he's just an old pervert. With Kawaguchi and Kitajima's assurance, the surveillance on Chun Guang and Inu finally disappeared. As for Chun Guang, he walked into the custom shop that Kawaguchi recommended. It was a top-notch club on the 3rd floor of Shinjuku Tonglan Street. Chapter 1221. Inu finally understood Chun Guang's intention when the two of them entered the luxurious private room that cost more than 200,000 Japanese yen. Chun Guang coughed lightly and said to Inu, "I ordered Jing Xiang. She is a very strong veteran driver. In other people's eyes, I should be playing crazily with you and her right now. But I will go out of this window later, understand? What about me? Where should I go? What am I going to do? Also, you want to use this famous actress as a disguise, right? But how can we make her not tell others about you leaving? Are we going to kill her?" Although Inu was a senior member of the Moon Sunflower sect, she was not a virgin, but in this foreign country, this place filled with decadent atmosphere, as a young girl, she subconsciously panicked and lost, and the question she asked was also quite unprofessional. Chun Guang only chuckled and patted her shoulder. "Isn't this your mission? What do you mean? As far as I know, your Moon Sunflower sect has a very special move, right?" Chun Guang asked meaningfully. Inu's eyebrows twitched. "You mean the Yin Sunflower technique?" "Aha, do you have the confidence to do it?" Chun Guang nodded. Alright, I give up. You've really given me a difficult task." Chun Guang coughed lightly. "Raising an army for 1,000 days, using it for a single day, this is your specialty. But the opponent is a top expert who has seen thousands of mountains and rivers. Don't you know to let them find a rookie?" Cough cough, to be honest, it is a bit difficult to find a rookie in this kind of place. Not to mention this is Shinjuku. What's more, the stronger the opponent, wouldn't it be a more sufficient alibi for me? Also, different from ordinary people, famous people are easier to find out about their background, and we are also less likely to be suspected. Actually, it wasn't that Chun Guang was afraid of the Japanese Secret Service organization. With him here, even if they pulled out a big gun, they wouldn't be able to do anything to him and Inu. He just didn't want to expand this matter to too many unrelated people. Otherwise, with his personality, once he went against the people of the island country's military in this place, as long as he started killing, things would immediately become more serious than he imagined. After waiting for about half an hour, the tall and slender teacher Jingxiang followed behind the manager and walked in with a very enthusiastic attitude. Firstly, Ningyan Kawaguchi's introduction was really useful. Although Ningyan Kawaguchi was a fake driver, this manager was really his classmate. They had known each other since childhood. As a member of the Yamada group, Kawaguchi's status was also quite high, and his words were quite effective. Secondly, Chun Guang was also very generous. With a raise of his hand, he gave the manager a tip of 100,000 yen, and even promised to give Jing Xiang teacher a reward of 1 million yen. This was simply a sky-high price. Although she heard that it was a Chinese, she was a little hesitant when she received this business. But after hearing from the manager that the customer was a good person, and that he brought his own dry food, and his attitude was also very kind, she was not so resistant. Chun Guang smiled and got up to say hello, then said that he was going to take a bath, and let Inu accompany Jing Xiang teacher to play. Seeing this situation, there was no need for Inu to explain. Jing Xiang immediately understood the intention of this rich businessman surnamed Zhong. As expected of a rich person who knew how to play. No wonder he wanted me to bring people here. It turned out that he wanted to play with the three of them. But if that was the case, why did he bring this woman? It was better to call another good sister. Forget it. Maybe he had some kind of quirk. When she got closer, sat next to Inu, and looked at this woman up close, Jing Xiang teacher finally understood why the rich businessman surnamed Zhong couldn't bear to part with this woman. Although she was a little older, this middle-aged woman was really not ordinary beautiful. Even among her peers, there were not many who could compare. At this time, Inyu seemed a little reserved at this time, using her rather poor English to say things like, "Hello, nice to meet you," and so on. Of course, she was pretending, but it was just to cooperate with Chen Guang to use his sunflower technique, and to reduce the other party's vigilance to the greatest extent. Jingxiang teacher didn't think that she was the real first sister, but instead very enthusiastically used her salt and pepper flavored English to negotiate with the other party, basically saying things like, "Please don't be nervous, don't worry. I am a professional. I will guide you well, and guarantee to provide you with the best quality service," and so on. The sound of water splashing came from the bathroom, but here, the two women had quickly entered the state. Inyu, who perfectly played the role of a first sister, had used very high efficiency to peel off Jingxiang teacher and herself into white rice dumplings. This was obviously much faster than the normal pace, and Jingxiang was a little not used to it, but she quickly got out of this state of mind and turned her attention to Inyu, who was next to her looking at her nervously. "Miss In, you put your hand here, yes, like this." Ah. 5 minutes later, Chen Guang quietly opened the door, and the clothes on his body were not wet at all. With the help of the pink hazy light, he saw the naked Inyu sitting on the bed with her legs crossed, with a cigarette in her mouth that he didn't know when she bought, and Jingxiang teacher was slumped beside her unconscious. Seeing that Chen Guang came out, Inyu didn't feel embarrassed at all. She dropped her legs, stretched her back, and said 2 words with a smoke ring in her mouth, "Done." If it weren't for other things in his mind, Chen Guang might not have been able to resist this temptation at a different time, with a different person. He took 2 steps forward and asked, "How long can it last?" As he said that, his nose twitched twice. "The smell is a little strange." Inyu shook her shoulders. "That's because her secretion is too much. She won't wake up for 3 hours. Anyway, this room belongs to us tonight. You can arrange your own time." 3 hours? That's just enough. No, this smell isn't that simple. Okay. Do you think the sunflower technique is just moving my hands? How can it be so easy? To use this unique technique, in addition to my exquisite techniques and the inner force of the moon sunflower sect, I also need to supplement it with medicine, not to mention that I'm dealing with an experienced expert this time. Where did you get the medicine? Inyu blinked. Do you really want to know? No. Goodbye. Chen Guang waved his hand, turned around and left. He didn't have time to waste here. Besides, if he stayed any longer, he was really afraid that he would lose his integrity in his old age. After going out, Chen Guang used the flowing light technique and walked openly on the street. In the eyes of ordinary people, there was nothing unusual about him, and he was only guarding against the rather advanced surveillance cameras in Dongdu. In this aspect, Dongdu was better than Luo City, perhaps because Japan focused more on the modern electronic facilities of these cities. If someone had nothing to do and focused their gaze on Chen Guang for a long time, they might occasionally find that he was very strange. His figure would flicker from time to time like an electronic character. It wasn't that he was weak, but there were some places where he couldn't avoid being recorded by 2 or 3 surveillance cameras from different angles, which was a new challenge for him. The original flowing light technique couldn't deal with the multi-angle refraction of light. Fortunately, the person who used this technique was Chen Guang, a martial sage that had never existed in true martial land, the Earth explosion savior Chen Guang himself, who had combined more than 400,000 unique skills and created the true martial divine skill. Okay, this title was too long. In short, after a few attempts, he successfully improved the flowing light technique and could be invisible from multiple angles, but it consumed a lot of energy. About 20 minutes later, he stood at the bottom of the Capitol building. He raised his head and looked up. He knew that Yamada Hideho lived on the 9th floor. Fortunately, the wall wasn't made of pure glass. It was uneven and had a very complicated shape, which made it easy for him to sneak in. Walking around the Capitol's skyscraper, Chen Guang lowered his head to look at his watch. It was already past midnight, and the pedestrians were still bustling. But when Chen Guang hid under the shadow of a tree, no one noticed his existence. He didn't rush to go online. but hid in the shadows to adjust his breath. Yamada Hideho was sitting in the study, frowning as he fiddled with the computer in front of him. In fact, he had fallen asleep just now, but he couldn't fall asleep after tossing and turning, so he got up. Floating in front of him was a 3D projection of the Imperial Capitol building. There were more than 200 green dots patrolling around the building. Each green dot represented a smartwatch that was worn on the pulse of a security guard. Not only could it be used as a Bluetooth headset, but it could also monitor the heartbeat of each security guard. If there was any abnormality, be it a sudden acceleration or a slowdown of the security guard's heartbeat, the signal would be transmitted to the command center immediately. Then, the command center could immediately mobilize the surveillance cameras in the building to monitor the location of the abnormality. Moreover, no matter where it was, it could ensure that at least 3 people would arrive within 30 seconds. Due to the incident in Luoyang City on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, the Yamadagumi spared no effort to protect their prince. They even replaced the entire building's security guards with their own people. Not only that, but the surveillance on the outside of the Capitol building didn't relax either. It was almost to the point where there were no blind spots. There were at least 8 people hiding in the patrol cars near the Capitol building, paying attention to the surveillance cameras at the same time. However, it was useless, because they were facing Chen Guang. No matter how tight the security was, there would still be loopholes in the face of someone with ulterior motives. Moreover, it was Chen Guang who had all kinds of special skills. After adjusting his breathing, Chen Guang used his qinggong. Without making any sound, he went straight up the tree behind him. Then, he took advantage of the moment when the patrol officers turned their heads and lightly tapped on the branch that was only as thick as a thumb. With a whoosh, he shot up to the outer wall of the Capitol building. Yamada Hideho stretched and minimized the 3D image in front of him. Then he opened his office software. He decided not to sleep tonight. He didn't have to go to the company tomorrow morning. In the afternoon, he had to wait until 3 o'clock to host a meeting. He didn't need to say anything in this meeting. He only needed to show his face. The meeting was to discuss the next step of the Yamada Group's photocatalyst project with Waseda University. In fact, they had already come to a conclusion on this matter. They were just informing the other shareholders. The others didn't have the right or qualification to object. However, he was a little hesitant now. He had asked his friends in China to do everything they could to investigate what kind of strategy Chen Guang and the forces related to him had used. However, they had found nothing. Then, he thought of the assassins who were lured by the bounty to deal with Chen Guang and were cursed. A strong sense of uneasiness rose from the bottom of his heart. This feeling came so abruptly that it even caused his entire body to shiver in an instant. He got up abruptly and went back to the bedroom. He shook the woman lying on the bed to wake her up. "Akai, wake up. I have to leave." The woman rubbed her sleepy eyes. "Where are you going? What are you going to do?" "I don't know, but I have to leave immediately." "Why?" "I suspect that Chen Guang isn't dead. No, maybe he has turned into a spirit and is looking for the people who dealt with him." "Wake up. You're Yamada Hideho, the CEO of the Yamada Group. Not those silly boys who like to read manga. Are you hallucinating because you've been too tired recently?" "Okay. Akai, you're right. I'll go make a cup of tea. I need to wake up." Yamada Hideho shook his head. He felt that he was being too sensitive. Since this morning, Yamada Group's people had been placed in any place where suspicious people might appear, be it the port or the airport. Even if Yamada Group lacked manpower in other cities, they could contact other forces for help. They had done everything they could, and there couldn't be any loopholes. Am I really being too sensitive? Standing in front of the window, Yamada Hideho took a sip of the hot tea. He felt the hot feeling pass through his throat. The strong stimulation made him feel a little calmer. I shouldn't be scaring myself. Yes, that must be it. Maybe the Schultz family or Sanshin Group provoked the forces that they shouldn't have, and they just happened to die at the same time. All of this is just a coincidence. Yamada Hideho strengthened his confidence again. Then he turned around and saw Chen Guang standing in front of him. Chen Guang also felt that he might have been a little too much. Ever since he let go of the restraint and decided to end these things with his own hands. He had been fascinated by the feeling of appearing behind others' backs. If I have to give myself a nickname based on my killing methods, I should probably be called the backstabber? Yamada Hideho's first reaction was to open his mouth and scream, just like everyone else's. But Chen Guang, who was prepared, wouldn't give him the chance. Before Yamada Hideho's pupils began to widen and his mouth opened, Chen Guang had already grabbed his neck. Then Chen Guang said, "No one can save you. You're already a dead man. You're standing here now because the Grim Reaper is still on his way." Yamada Hideho looked at Chen Guang with a pleading look, hoping that Chen Guang would give him a chance to speak. But Chen Guang didn't give him the chance. He exerted a little force with his fingers and blocked Yamada Hideho's windpipe with his fingertips. As time went by, Yamada Hideho's face gradually turned livid. He struggled with all his might, but it was to no avail. After livid, his face turned red. Then his head tilted and he died tragically. Chen Guang let go of his hand and murmured to himself. In fact, he had already guessed what this guy wanted to say. He wanted to beg Chen Guang to let the others go. Chen Guang turned his head and looked in the direction of the bedroom again. In the end, he didn't kill the woman named Akai. It was meaningless. After leaving the Capitol building, Chen Guang went straight to the Yamada family's mansion, which was half an hour away. Just like the day before, the whole world was shocked again the next morning. Yamada and his son died mysteriously in their own home. They died of suffocation for no reason. No one knew what had happened. As for Chen Guang, he stayed in the hotel calmly with Inu. When she woke up in Jingxiang last night, she saw Chen Guang and Inu putting on their clothes and getting ready to leave. In her chaotic memory, she couldn't remember clearly what had happened last night. She only remembered that the woman named Inu was intimate with her. Then she fainted because she was too excited. As for the rich man named Zhong, he seemed to have woken up later. Her lower body was still aching, but it was not unacceptable. It was like the feeling after shooting a blockbuster. Forget it. For the sake of the million pills, I'll just let it be. Chapter 1222. Chen Guang's attitude towards the flood of the outside world was the same as before. He only cared about himself, and did not care about it. Even if the entire Dongdu was turned upside down because of the death of the Yamada father and son, he did not care. Instead of paying attention to these things, it was better to focus on the country again. Speaking of which, there was another episode in the country. Last night, Chu Zijin's meticulously prepared my God. The fourth episode was finally broadcasted. Chili TV, major live streaming websites, and video websites were released at the same time. It was said that the show had achieved unprecedented success. The all-rounder Chen Guang personally became the show's biggest gimmick. In addition, the show's effect was quite explosive. After watching it, the audience was in an uproar. There was a lot of good comments, but there were also many bad comments. The extremely divided reputation did not affect the show's popularity at all. Instead, it continued to grow. However, at this time, Chen Guang was in a special situation. In the end, these news only gathered into a short briefing message and appeared on his mobile phone. Chen Guang wanted to use his mobile phone to see how the video of the show was edited and if the post-production was good. However, considering that he was in Japan, if he used traditional traffic, he might be caught. For the time being, he decided to watch it when he returned. Anyway, the boat was sinking. Whether he watched it or not, he could not change anything. He should choose to believe in Chu Zijin's planning ability. There was no reason for her to fall into the same trap for the fourth time in a row. The chaos in Dongdu continued. Whether it was people from Huaxia or people from other countries flying to Japan, they were quite annoyed and had to face repeated inquiries and investigations. Even Chen Guang and Inu, who had long been labeled as harmless, were found by 4 groups of people within 2 hours and asked different questions. Generally, it was questions such as where were they last night, who were they with, and what did they do. Chen Guang and Inu easily dealt with the pre-planned speech. With the report submitted by the sub-leader Takahashi and Kaguchi Noyan last night, and the testimony of the famous female artist Kyoka, the two were easily cleared of suspicion and finally completely settled down at noon. However, others were not so lucky. Not only the Chinese, but other tourists and travelers from all over the world did not have it any better. They were either interrogated openly, investigated secretly, or monitored. The members of the Yamada group had almost gone crazy and were about to turn Tokyo upside down. But Chen Guang calmly allowed Inu to return to the country on her own. As for himself, according to the original plan, he should leave with them and go back to his hometown as soon as possible. He had even booked a plane ticket, but he suddenly decided to change his itinerary. He rescheduled the plane ticket to the night, rented a car, and went straight to Mount Fuji with the navigation. It was not that he was in the mood to travel, but since he opened his eyes this morning, he had felt something in his heart. This feeling was very strange. He couldn't tell what was attracting him, but he subconsciously felt that since he was already here, he might as well take a look. This was not because Chen Guang had become emotional, but because he had begun to believe in metaphysics. If there is a thought in your heart that drives you to do something, then don't think too much and just do it bravely. If you do it, you may not regret it, but if you don't, you will definitely regret it in the future. With this thought, Chen Guang drove the car to the foot of Mount Fuji at the maximum speed of the highway. As a Chinese, he did not have a good impression of the scenic spots in Japan, but people had a natural closeness to beautiful scenery, which made him feel very twisted. What was even more strange was that after coming to the foot of the mountain, the inexplicable impulse deep in his heart did not weaken, but became stronger, constantly urging him to go to the top of the mountain. However, now was not the time to climb Mount Fuji. Only in July and August every year was the suitable time to climb this famous scenic spot in Japan. Now he could only take the cable car to the mountainside, and it was impossible to go up through the regular channel. In addition, no matter how fast he walked now, if he chose to go up the mountain now, he would not be able to catch the night flight. Helplessly looking up at the inverted fan-shaped Mount Fuji in the distance, Chen Guang frowned. He wanted to come back as soon as possible, but he inexplicably wanted to go up and see what would happen. He only hated that he didn't have a clone technique, and he couldn't really fly in the sky like a sword immortal, otherwise he could fly up now. Then he took out his phone and began to look for top-secret information on it. When he saw something on the map, his eyes suddenly lit up. Perhaps it was a blessing from God. There was a commercial heliport at the foot of the mountain, and there were helicopters for rent. Although at this time and in this climate, this kind of helicopter with a pilot would definitely not be rented out. Other pilots had not lived enough. But Chen Guang could drive it himself. After asking for a warm cup of milk tea from a nearby milk tea shop, Chen Guang strolled to the airport. After thinking about it for about 5 seconds, he decided to do something big. Although he also had a pilot's license in his pseudonym Zhongjun's identity, this was a special skill, and the two countries did not have direct access. At this time, his identity was just an ordinary rich tourist. If the name Zhongjun suddenly appeared on Mount Fuji, with a helicopter driver's license, it would become quite suspicious. But if he didn't provide a driver's license, it was impossible for others to let him drive the helicopter, even if they directly paid for it. Therefore, other than being a thief, Chen Guang had no other choice. He sneaked out of the airport and looked around. The gate was locked, and there was not a single guard. Well, normally, who would have thought that a helicopter could be stolen? Half an hour later, in the midst of the chaos, a civilian helicopter with white paint suddenly took off. Before the management of the scenic area could react, the helicopter disappeared in the sky at an extremely fast speed and went straight to the top of the mountain. The guards of Mount Fuji only chased from halfway up the mountain for less than 15 minutes before they turned back in frustration. Snow had begun to fall on the mountain, and the road up the mountain had been blocked. It was impossible to send a helicopter to chase in this weather. The snowy weather was difficult for others, but it was not difficult for Chen Guang. As long as the performance of the machinery allowed it, he could maximize the effect of the machinery. Half an hour later, the bold and careful Chen Guang stopped the helicopter on a large rock near the crater with quite exquisite operation. Then he got out of the helicopter and walked to the crater on the thick snow in the face of the wind and snow. He used his qigong, and it really felt like he was walking on the snow without leaving a trace. His flying speed was extremely fast. The higher he went, the closer he was to the crater at the top of the mountain, the stronger the strange feeling in Chen Guang's heart. Looking back, all he could see was a blanket of pure white snow. The afternoon sun hung high in the sky, but there were snowflakes falling from the sky. When the sunlight shone on the body, it made people feel warm and genial, but the cold winter wind and snowflakes made people feel very cold. This feeling of dislocation made people feel very strange. Chen Guang walked on the edge of the crater. White smoke was rising from the center of the deep depression in front of him, but below the white smoke was the lake-like snow. The strange feeling in his heart was like a beast that was about to break out of its cage, and it was even as fierce as an uncontrollable drug addict. But he didn't know where this strange feeling came from. He simply sat down with his legs crossed and tried to communicate with Ruri in his heart. However, Ruri in the cup in his arms didn't give him any feedback, and he didn't know what she was busy with. Even when Chen Guang sank his mind into the world in the cup, he didn't find Ruri. He wanted to scold her, but Chen Guang let it go after thinking about it. Things had turned out like this, and indeed many things were beyond her expectation. After all, Ruri was just a victim trapped in the heavenly Holy Grail. She was not the real artifact spirit of the Holy Grail, and it was normal that she didn't know the many mysteries and changes of the Holy Grail. As the owner of the Holy Grail, he still didn't understand anything. Thinking about it carefully, he was in no position to criticize her at all. When Chen Guang tried to extend his mind out from the world of Cloud City of the Holy Grail, the tentacles of his mind were firmly blocked by an invisible barrier, and he could only retreat completely. However, his perception of the outside world had become sharper. Not long after, his whole body suddenly trembled. What is this? In the sky above his head, a strange long and narrow crack had mysteriously appeared. This crack was at least a few kilometers long and a few hundred meters wide. Its shape was twisted like lightning, and it disappeared in the sky in a flash. But in the instant that it appeared, it happened to be caught by Chen Guang's eyes. On the other side of the crack was an indescribably deep darkness. Chen Guang sucked in a cold breath. The power of the Holy Grail that filled the entire world suddenly grew denser with this sudden change. Don't tell me I have to fuse now. Damn, you're messing with me. How am I going to get home? No, even if I take the plane with Inu, it doesn't seem to be of any use. I still won't be able to make it in time. Chen Guang muttered to himself for a while. After realizing that it was impossible, he was no longer so anxious. Anyway, he could not use it recklessly. He might as well let nature take its course. What made his head hurt even more was that he could not even make a phone call now. Although the special communication device in his hand had the ability to receive signals from all over the world, there was no signal coverage in this place at all. Although he could use satellite communication, the magnetic field in this place was rather chaotic, and the signal was seriously affected by geomagnetic interference. Even if Chen Guang wanted to make use of this time, to use the special channel to contact his family, he could not do it. Why don't I hurry back home? I'll do my best and leave the rest to fate. His worry for his family, and the intense curiosity in his heart that wanted to devour his rationality clashed with each other. But in the end, the safety of his family prevailed. After Chen Guang made up his mind, he could no longer continue to stay here to satisfy his curiosity. He just wanted to leave as soon as possible. He even regretted that he should not have come here to waste time. Even if he still could not make it in time, even if he encountered complete fusion on the plane, at least he could rush back to Lilai as soon as possible after it happened. He did not know when he would be able to make it in time like now. In addition, he stole the plane when he went up Mount Fuji. Although his identity was not found out, it was inevitable that he would be troubled when he returned to the tourist center. It would be tomorrow morning at the earliest before he could return to Lilai County. If there were any unforeseen events, they would be delayed even further. Perhaps he should not have chosen to go out at this time in the first place. It did not matter even if he let the Schultz family, the Sanshin Group, and the Yamada Society off for the time being. After the world fusion was completed, if they still existed, it would not be too late to settle the score with them. I regret it. Unfortunately, there is no medicine for regret. Chun Guang muttered in his heart as he sped up on the snow and ran to the boulder where the helicopter was parked. Just as he was about to approach the boulder, a sudden change occurred. A gust of wind suddenly rose from behind him and whistled past him. Even with the strength of his legs, he was still blown forward by the strong wind and almost fell. What was even more unfortunate was that the helicopter that was parked on the boulder was almost blown away like a toy at the same time. Under his dumbfounded gaze, the helicopter rolled down the mountain. After rolling for about 60 or 70 meters, the helicopter crashed down the cliff. Less than 10 seconds later, there was a loud noise from below, followed by a burst of fire. Chun Guang rushed to the edge of the cliff and looked down. At the place where the helicopter landed, he only saw flames, billowing smoke, and a pile of burning scrap metal. "Damn it! This is poisonous," he wailed. Before Chun Guang could finish his words, another light suddenly lit up in the sky. When Chun Guang immediately raised his head, he caught a glimpse of the second crack in the sky, completely different from the previous one. This second crack was bright and dazzling, as if there was a sun hidden inside. The snowflakes that were constantly falling in the air were even cut off by this crack, leaving a long empty space. At this moment, the heavenly Holy Grail in his arms flew out of his satchel on its own without his summoning and floated in the air. Chun Guang stared at the Grail and wanted to move his body, but he was powerless. He was controlled by an invisible force. Chapter 12:23. Even when he was in the world in the cup, Chun Guang had never experienced the feeling of being completely frozen to the point where he couldn't move. It wasn't as simple as his body being restrained. The power to control came from within his body, from his muscles to his bones, to his veins, and even down to his cells. Every part of his body that could be controlled with his mind was completely frozen. Apart from that, the heavenly Holy Grail hovering in the air was flying further and further away. In mid-air, it expanded rapidly like a fatty big sea that was soaked in water. In just a short 10 seconds, the drinking cup turned into a floating tower that was nearly 100 meters tall in front of Chun Guang. Of course, the only thing that changed was the volume. The cup was still the same shape, and even the flying goddess statue that was made of glass was enlarged to the same scale. If not for the fact that the feather robe had shrunk into a bikini, the enlarged version of the goddess statue would have looked even more fairy-like. As the cup changed, the frequency of cracks appearing in the sky suddenly increased. Long, narrow, and disorderly cracks appeared in the sky, one after another without any pattern. The scene looked spectacular, but it didn't make a single sound. Chun Guang couldn't do anything about it. He was even worried that the strange phenomenon at the peak of Mount Fuji would attract the attention of others. If all the satellites in the sky were pointed in this direction, it was hard to guarantee that he and the huge heavenly Holy Grail wouldn't be photographed. Then perhaps his greatest secret would be directly exposed. Wait, the snowflakes aren't falling anymore. Chun Guang squinted and looked at the sky again. The snowflakes that were falling from the sky had completely stopped. Alright, it's the familiar time stopping again. This kind of big trick written in fantasy novels has become a common occurrence for me. Chun Guang couldn't be bothered to complain anymore. Anyway, he didn't have to worry about his secret being exposed. He didn't know what would happen next, and there was nothing he could do. He could only watch everything like a statue. He was just a little puzzled. Everything felt normal last night. Although the power of the Holy Grail was still getting stronger, the speed of change was still under control. Based on his estimation, it would take at least 1 to 2 years for the power of the Holy Grail that filled the entire world to completely transform from quantitative to qualitative. Why did it suddenly change so drastically today? This isn't logical. Just as Chun Guang was thinking this, the Holy Grail suddenly began to tremble. The huge lid of the cup rotated and opened on its own. After the lid left its body, it floated towards Chun Guang and landed beside him with a loud bang. As for the cup in mid-air, some liquid substance began to gush out. This scene shocked Chen Guang to the point that he was burnt on the outside and tender on the inside. He couldn't speak. Although I'm complaining that it's not scientific, you don't have to force it to be scientific. The liquid that was gushing out of the Holy Grail was the power of the Holy Grail, so dense that it couldn't be dissolved. The power of the Holy Grail was supposed to be an existence of energy. Chen Guang did not expect that when this mysterious power appeared in the real world at such a high concentration, it could actually form such a liquid-like effect. However, this thing evaporated very quickly. After gushing out of the cup, it spread out and flowed in all directions. At first, it looked like a waterfall, but before it reached the bottom of the Holy Grail, it completely transformed into a gaseous state and dissipated into the air. Although Chen Guang was trapped in place and unable to move, he was still blown into a mess by the strong wind that was blowing at him. This strong wind was filled with a sweet smell. It was the familiar smell of cooking oil, tui. This is the power of the Holy Grail that's so dense that it's sweet. But can we not run out of oxygen? Are you trying to suffocate me to death? Before he finished speaking, the liquid that was gushing out of the Holy Grail suddenly surged higher, forming a fountain that was hundreds of meters tall. From below, it looked like a waterspout when a tornado struck. As the liquid rapidly transformed into a gaseous state after falling down, the air instantly became even sweeter. However, Chen Guang no longer felt suffocated. As the power of the Holy Grail completely dispersed and disintegrated into its most basic energy state, the air suddenly returned to normal. Chen Guang was not sure how the power of the Holy Grail fused with the real world. Based on his limited knowledge of university physics and chemistry, he could only speculate that the energy was completely integrated into atoms, or an even smaller level, in its most basic energy state. Just like the van der Waals force between molecules, or the chemical bonding force between atoms, or it could be the nuclear force between the protons that made up atoms, or even smaller. According to the research of modern scientific theories, there were even smaller leptons, hadrons, and even quarks below the protons. As for the smallest fundamental particle in modern scientific theories, it was generally believed that a particle with no other internal structure could be considered a fundamental particle. From another perspective, after combining quantum theory and the theory of relativity, it was believed that matter usually had a wave-particle duality, and that particles were made up of strings. The world of quantum physics was so complicated and mysterious. In order to find the existence of a possible particle, scientists even had to wait for hundreds of years for technological advancement. But even so, until now people still could not confirm that quarks were the smallest particle units. If quarks had volume, then theoretically, they could still be divided. However, according to string theory, perhaps the fundamental particles that made up quarks could not exist for a long period of time. Instead, they were always in constant change, constantly changing into another existence as the energy changed. This led the theory back to the wave-particle duality. It could also be considered that matter was energy in a certain sense. It was just like how some theories believed that the photons that made up light were weightless when they were stationary, but if they moved forward at the speed of light and landed on a large enough surface, the light pressure could be measured, which proved that the photons had weight. It was the same complicated and mysterious theory. However, with the further advancement of modern theoretical and practical research, the correctness of quantum theory was once again doubted. Even the foundation of the wave-particle duality theory might be shaken. The exploration of science was always a process of verification and constant questioning. Although many people suspected that as long as matter existed, then it would definitely be eternally and infinitely divided. Even if they knew the answer, they could not find any theoretical proof. They could not prove that it was correct, nor could they prove that it was wrong. It was just like how the ancients knew that the sun must rise and set, but they did not know why it was so. A great man once said, "The more you know, the more ignorant you feel." This sentence could also be applied to modern scientific research. Based on Chen Guang's knowledge as a university student, even if he had taken the initiative to go to the library to search for the mysteries of the Holy Grail, He could only stop at this level. Now he suspected that since the Holy Grail was an existence of energy, and since it could use pure energy as the foundation to form a new body in the world of the cup, then when this energy was fused into the real world, it might be adding another quark in addition to the 6 suspected quark particles. It might also be using an even smaller unit, on an even smaller level. If the so-called string theory was really correct, then it could directly change the level of energy or matter at the string level. In the basic composition of all matter, adding a type of string, or adding a way to combine the string together. If the string was not the smallest unit, then consider it as the smallest unit. This was too profound, but perhaps it could be explained in a relatively simple way. Assuming that a substation could take care of the residents of 3 nearby residential areas. Under normal circumstances, this substation could provide a power of 100,000 kilowatts, but the maximum power that the output circuit could withstand was only 50,000 kilowatts. By modifying the circuit and adding a copper core line parallel to the original output circuit, the substation's maximum power output could then reach 100,000 kilowatts. On the surface, this added circuit did not seem to change anything, but the electricity consumption experience of the residents of these 3 residential areas had already undergone earth-shattering changes. To put it another way, if a marionette had 5 strings, then after adding another string to it, the gameplay would also undergo a huge change. On the surface it would still look the same, but on the inside there would be a huge change. Therefore, with the Holy Grail as the core, the current fusion of the real world and the real world should essentially be a new type of basic energy, or laws fusing into reality, changing from the microscopic level of the real fundamental particles or energy. But from a macroscopic perspective, perhaps nothing had happened, just like when humans received X-rays. Only God knows how many particles passed through their bodies, but they still ate and drank as usual. Perhaps it was because he was blessed with good fortune. Chen Guang did not expect that he would be able to figure this out at the last moment. He felt a little better. At least he did not have to worry that his parents would be gone when he woke up, and he would become 2 complete strangers. If that happened, his defeat would be too complete and too miserable. But using his brain could not change the situation in front of him. He still could not move, and with the passage of time, the Holy Grail's power that surged out from the Holy Grail seemed endless, becoming more and more ferocious. The water column of the Holy Grail's power that soared into the sky was even about to break through the horizon and reach into space. The frequency of the space-time fissures appearing in the sky was getting higher, and the fissures were getting thicker and thicker. Each time they appeared, the time it took for them to appear was also getting longer and longer. The saddest thing was that these fissures were getting closer and closer to Chen Guang. Only God knew how powerful these fissures were. And when faced with such a situation, the only option left in a normal person's mind would be to quickly run away. As a normal person, Chen Guang felt very helpless. So, what exactly happened between last night and now? Why did it turn out like this? Before he was completely swallowed by the fissures, Chen Guang's mind was still painfully thinking about this question. Chapter 1224. Last night, before Chen Guang took Yingyu to the custom shop, in another time zone in China, a long-awaited variety show, God of Joy, was finally broadcasted. The show was an unprecedented success. Today, many families had countless choices. As a variety show, it achieved more than 15% of the ratings. Especially the special effects scene that was inexplicably released at the end of the show, which made the ratings reach 23% for a short period of time. This almost meant that there were at least 50 million people watching the live broadcast in China alone. And this did not include those who watched the live broadcast on the internet. The special effects scene at the end of the show undoubtedly caused a huge controversy. However, Xu Zijin did not explain this scene in the production of the show. She did not tell others that it was computer special effects. But she also did not say that it really happened. Everything could only be guessed. Xu Zijin's original intention was to use this method to deliberately stir up controversy. The development of the matter was basically the same as what she expected. After the show ended, the popularity of the news skyrocketed on the internet, especially after 10 p.m. Western and American audiences in different time zones woke up one after another. Perhaps they turned on their computers in the company, or perhaps they took out their mobile phones. Then, they were shocked by the shocking popularity of the news and quickly clicked on it. Whether it was Chinese or international audiences, their views of the show were generally similar. The first half of the show seemed to be an exciting variety show that could barely pass. It was a good explanation of the fact that Chen Guang had incredible strength, especially the part where he pulled the high-speed rail with his bare hands. It was quite amazing, as if it was a special effect. However, the show had always promoted reality. No matter how sci-fi it looked, it was indeed something that happened. The almighty Superman Chen Guang could really do it. Combined with the previous videos of him catching bullets with his bare hands, the experience was better, and it was easier to accept this inhuman scene. The real essence was in the second half. If the first half of the show was inhuman, then the second half of the show was completely beyond the scope of human understanding. It was a scene that would only appear in fantasy novels or Western fantasy movies. It was not scientific or reasonable at all. However, this scene happened right after the challenge of reality. It made people subconsciously overturn their first impression and seriously examine or discuss it. Was it real or fake? What was the purpose of shooting this scene? To shoot a movie? There was no need for that. Not to mention the others, even the Tianguang group had a strong debate about this. The four great Vajras slammed the table and argued endlessly. Yu Hong and Su Li thought that the video was a special effect made by their boss secretly. The reason why he secretly gave it to Mr. Chu of the media company was probably just his usual way of hyping up. However, Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoyang firmly believed that the video was very likely to be real. Their reason was also very sufficient. Their boss would never do anything without a purpose. He must have a purpose for letting Tianguang Media put this video in the show. According to his own words, and according to his article in Hi. My God. Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoyang believed that the purpose of his participation in the fourth episode of God of Happiness was to announce to the world that he was unparalleled in the world. That's right. Therefore, the last scene of the show must be real. Then, Yu Hong and Su Li began to slam the table and spit. Damn idiots. You guys should be a little more normal. Use your melon seeds to think. Is there such an incredible creature in this world? Besides, where is he fighting with people? Is there such a place on Earth? You won't even believe it yourself. In the end, Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoyang were convinced and admitted that it was a special effects scene. Similar discussions like these four people were happening all over the world. But in the end, everyone reached a consensus. Although the scene was very real, and there was no trace of special effects, it was indeed something made by computer special effects. It was most likely Chen Guang's next movie. Although there had never been a classic fantasy blockbuster in Chinese movies before, it was worth looking forward to just by looking at the special effects. In just over half a day, at least 1 billion people around the world had seen this scene in the killing world on their computers, mobile phones, or even in the special reports of TV stations. And they had heated discussions about it. No one would have thought that when they saw the video, an invisible thread would appear in their fate. This thread originated from them and spread to the sky, but after leaving the Earth, it dissipated in the invisible void of the universe. At the moment when Chen Guang stood on the top of Mount Fuji, more than 3 billion of the nearly 7 billion people in the world had been connected to the video that Chu Zijin secretly shot in the killing world. They might not have seen it, but at least they had heard it with their ears and knew it in their minds. The moment they knew about it, an additional thread appeared in their fate, but it was thinner than that of the people who had seen the video. Correspondingly, for those who had read it a few times or argued with others over it a few times, the threads that were tied to their destinies became especially thick. In the depths of the universe, which was so far away that it could not be calculated, these billions of threads suddenly condensed together, turned into a sharp cone, pierced through an invisible barrier, and stretched into a certain void. Then, the process of the integration of the real world and the real world, which was originally advancing steadily, was suddenly accelerated. These threads were like the iron chain on an anchor, pulling the two worlds together. This was the real reason why the integration of the worlds was suddenly completed when Chen Guang was on Mount Fuji. After his figure was swallowed by the crack, Liuli's long-disappeared figure slowly appeared in the sky above Cloud City, in the heavenly Holy Grail. At this moment, she looked a little disheveled, her face was charred black, and her hair was disheveled. Liuli kept stomping her feet unwillingly. She looked up at the sky above Cloud City, where there was a vortex that was so huge that it could cover the sky above Cloud City, and it was sucking crazily. The power of the Holy Grail in the space of Cloud City was being sucked out at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, the pure white ground of Cloud City was rapidly melting. It first turned into liquid, then evaporated, and the gaseous power of the Holy Grail was replenished. The ground of Cloud City was sinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. Looking at this scene, Liuli sighed and muttered to herself, "Damn it, I still failed. Brat, I tried my best." It turned out that recently, Liuli had realized that the situation was not good. So she took the initiative to suppress the heavenly Holy Grail. Her operation was considered successful before, but it was ultimately because of the high. My God. Too many unrelated people were connected to the power of the heavenly Holy Grail, thus destroying the barrier between the two worlds, and completely completing the process of the world integration. Under the precondition that time had stopped, perhaps only a moment had passed, or perhaps tens of billions of years had passed, Chen Guang finally opened his eyes slowly. What he saw was not the snow-covered scenery of Mount Fuji, but a familiar bed. The mahogany mosquito net rack, which had a history of at least 10 years, was placed on his head. It was very eye-piercing. What was even more eye-piercing was the poster pasted on the wall next to the mosquito net rack. It was Ronaldo, who had participated in the 2002 World Cup with Afu's head. Chen Guang's mind was in a mess. If he remembered correctly, this poster was pasted on the wall when he was still in primary school. At that time, Brazil had just won the World Cup, and Fatty had scored 2 goals in the final. I can't possibly be reborn as a child, right? Ah. Rub 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 rub. It wasn't easy for me to conquer the world. My hundreds of millions of assets. It wasn't easy for me to get so many girls. It wasn't easy for me to practice all these amazing skills. It F** King sent me back to the past? It rewound for me? F***CK. 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 Chen Guang screamed and sat up straight, thumping his chest and stamping his feet. And no, my height doesn't seem to have changed. He looked down at his arms, which had blue veins popping out because of his perfect body, and then casually picked up his phone from beside the pillow and snapped a selfie. His eyes weren't playing tricks on him. It was still this familiar handsome face, and he hadn't returned to his childhood. Then what the hell is this? I'm clearly on Mount Fuji, but why am I lying on the bed of the old house I lived in more than 10 years ago when I woke up? At this moment, the door of Chen Guang's bedroom was pushed open with a bang. It was his father, Chen Guoli, who barged in. Oh, Dad! Chen Guang's eyes were filled with tears, and he finally felt at ease. Looking at his father's face and eyes, he knew that his father was still his biological father. There was nothing wrong with him. Bro, double hit. What are you howling about? Can't you make me less worried? Don't you know what time it is? You only know how to sleep. Chen Guoli rushed up and slapped his head. It was a man's singles technique that Chen Guang was quite familiar with. Chen Guang didn't feel any pain after being hit. Instead, he was happy. Chen Guoli immediately realized that something was wrong. He looked at Chen Guang with a strange expression. My silly daughter, did the nightmare make you stupid? Your dad is cooking in the kitchen. Chen Guang stared. If he didn't hear wrongly, Dad's logic was a little messed up? Silly daughter. On the other side, Chen Guoli looked at Chen Guang's confused face and panicked. He thought that he had beaten up Chen Guang, so he turned around and shouted, F***CK. My daughter's father. Quick, come over and take a look. There's something wrong with Chen Guang's brain. Chen Guang jumped off the bed and grabbed Chen Guoli's shoulder. Dad, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with me. What's wrong with you? Chen Guoli was even more agitated than Chen Guang. He said angrily, You call this nothing wrong with you? You don't even recognize me. I'm your mother. Chen Guang hissed as he inhaled a breath of cold air. 10,000 alpacas were galloping in his heart. Damn it. My, mommy. It's over. Chapter 12:25. Sai, that's right. You finally recognize me as your mother. Chen Guoli looked at Chen Guang with satisfaction. He had no idea that his gaze and expression were giving his precious daughter the creeps. With that said, Chen Guoli patted Chen Guang's head again. What do you mean? Hurry up and wash up and have breakfast. Don't forget that you still have to tutor your brother in the morning. Chen Guang continued to look dumbfounded. He was alarmed. Holy sh*t. Does this mean that not only did I not lose a family member after the world fusion, but I even gained a brother? How the f***ck is that possible? No, this is quite wrong. The current situation made Chen Guang feel a little familiar. If he didn't remember wrongly, about a month or two ago, he had also encountered such an upside-down world on a plane. Many things had been reversed. At that time, Chen Guang had nearly broken down. Fortunately, this state didn't last long before he returned to normal. He never expected it to happen again. Furthermore, it was after the world fusion. Does this mean it's going to be like this in the future? Isn't this a little inappropriate? Also, what's my brother's name? What does he look like? Why don't I have any impression of him at all? Did I get it wrong somewhere? 15 minutes later, looking at Fan Lingshan, who was sitting at the same table and eating, Chen Guang felt like he didn't even have enough blood to vomit. Just now my dad, okay mom, was referring to Fan Lingshan as the big brother. On second thought, it didn't seem wrong. She was originally his younger sister, but she became his brother after the world turned upside down. According to the old world's timeline, it should be winter break now. Fan Lingshan should have returned to her hometown for winter break, not long after she finished her final exams in the first semester of her senior year. In fact, Chen Guang really wanted to ask if Fan Lingshan's surname was Fan or Chen, but he was afraid that he would anger his parents to tears. Is there really an elder brother in this world who can forget his younger sister's surname? Therefore, he suppressed the matter and only called out Lingshan's name. After the meal, he was dragged to tutor Fan Lingshan. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chen Guang saw her surname on her workbook. It was not Fan or Chen, but Hua Lingshan. Chen Guang was confused again, but he didn't dare to ask. He could only blame the world for changing too quickly, to the point where his brain could not react at all. He could also blame the heavenly Holy Grail for changing the entire world. But he, who had fallen into the space-time rift, was the only one who had been forgotten. Tutor or anything, that didn't exist. He couldn't be a tutor for the rest of his life. When he flipped open the mathematics textbook in front of him and saw that it was Chinese, he immediately broke down. He tried to look at the teaching materials again and found that he was no match for them at all. Even the literal meaning of the words written on it was completely opposite. If he opened his mouth, he would be exposed. After making a casual joke, Chen Guang ran out of the room in pain. After coming out, Chen Guang did not dare to communicate with others. Instead, he ran straight out of the house and wandered on the street. At the same time, he took out his phone to check his contact list. After discovering that the names in his phone had not changed, he felt a little more at ease. In addition, he tried to circulate his inner strength without any problems. His martial arts skills were still there. Then, he tried the special ability of the Earth Paste Exploder and quietly condensed a palm-sized stone in his palm. The special ability was also present. Alright, now that the most basic abilities were on him, there was nothing left to be afraid of. But after eavesdropping on the people bargaining in the market for a while, his mood became very bad again. They were clearly selling pork, but the buyer asked how much they were selling carrots for. He escaped with an incomparably sorrowful heart, and then he was severely injured in front of the county town's pier. The pier was supposed to be a bus terminal. If this continued, he would probably go crazy, right? In addition, Chen Guang could not determine the situation of Tianguang Group and Chengguang Environmental Protection. The contacts in his phone did not change, but it did not mean that their identities were the same as before. For example, Lin Jingwei might be a poor man, Bai Fan might be a rich young master, Yu Hong might be his own boss, and Lu Xiaoyang might be an unemployed gay man. In short, the people were still the same, but their identities might have changed. The most annoying thing was that he could not call them, because of the disorder of logic. Otherwise, how could he speak? Am I your boss? Then the other side would reply, no, I am your boss. Then the question was, who was the boss? Chen Guang looked up at the sky, and could not help but feel sad. Last time, there was a reason to return to normal, but this time, the whole world was saying goodbye to the old world, and moving towards a new one. If this was always the case, then the rest of his life would be a little sad. Standing on the side of the road, looking at the various cars on the left, Chen Guang did not feel very good. Damn! If I am not mistaken, the steering wheel is on the right side of the car. He took off his hat, and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Chen Guang! At this moment, a scream came from not far away from him. He turned around, and saw a few high school girls holding their palms, and looking at him with infatuation. It seemed that his identity as a super online celebrity was still there, so Tianguang Group still existed. Hey, we are your idols. Your program a few days ago was amazing. The high school girl's next words made the smile on his face freeze. He waved his hand weakly. Thank you for the compliment. After saying that, he turned around and ran away. He did not want to talk to anyone at all, because he found that his heart was in a mess again. This time, the reversal of logic seemed to be different from the last time. For example, the meaning of the words you and me did not change, but it still brought him great inconvenience. When the sky turned dark, Chen Guang went home with a heavy heart and had his breakfast. He did not say much, and went straight to his room to try to turn on the computer. He planned to read some current events or historical materials, and try his best to understand the current situation of the whole world. But in less than 5 minutes, he completely broke down. With his current logical thinking, it was too difficult for him to connect with the whole world. Looking at the cup on the writing desk, Chen Guang sank his thoughts into it again. This time, Lily was finally in it. She looked a little tired and her mental state was not very good, but at least she could speak. Lily, can you tell me what is going on now? Chen Guang stood in front of her and asked with his hands on his hips. As he spoke, his eyes kept wandering all over her body. The feather dress she was wearing had been slightly upgraded from a bikini to a piece of cloth. It was very much a new fashion of the next generation. Lily raised her head and looked at him with shame. As you can see, your real world and the real world have completely merged. From now on, your real world is also considered one of the 9 special worlds in the Heavenly Holy Grail. But other than the fact that other people's logic has become chaotic, I don't feel any changes at all. That's because you were sent to the end of time and slept for too long. Your perception has become dull, and it will take a while for it to recover. As for the problem of logical confusion that you mentioned, that is the sequela of direct integration. Don't worry, it will slowly return to normal after a long time. Really? But those words, those books that have been printed, the sign on the bus station with the dock printed on it, and those cars with the steering wheel on the right, can they also return to normal? Lily laughed mysteriously. Of course. But won't that be discovered? Lily shrugged. You're thinking too much. It's like putting a fish into a basin of water and moving the basin from the living room to the kitchen. Will the fish know? When changes keep happening, everyone's memory and outlook on life will be constantly revised. Only you, the savior, can see this change as an outsider. In the eyes of others, there won't be any problems. Don't underestimate the power of the Heavenly Holy Grail. It can create planes, and of course it can also change planes. Then what should I do now? Eat and drink. If you don't want to talk to people, then talk less. Otherwise, find a quiet place to hide, and wait for everything to return to normal before dealing with others. In addition, you have to be mentally prepared. There will be more things happening in the next few days. Eventually, you should be able to slowly reach a stable state. All right, I understand. Chen Guang nodded and asked again. Is there still no movement from the deer fruit? God knows where she went. I don't know either. As Liuli spoke, she turned her head and looked in the direction where the deer fruit was originally standing. Her expression was rather disappointed. Chen Guang felt that ever since the Heavenly Holy Grail's drastic change, Liuli had also changed a lot. She was no longer filled with an unapproachable divine might like before. When she spoke and did things, her demeanor was more like that of the mortal world. In the past, although she spoke like an ordinary person, there was still a sense of aloofness in her bones. Now it was all gone. After coming out of the cup world, Chen Guang stood in front of the window again and looked at the people coming and going on the old street. He carefully felt the possible changes that Liuli had mentioned. There was a barber shop across the street, but the sign hanging on it was Ajie's Hair Growth House. It was a little intoxicating. Chen Guang pricked up his ears and concentrated his energy. He was able to distinguish the sounds coming from the hair growth house from the noisy street. The shampoo inside was introducing business to the customers and tricking them to apply for a card. It seemed that all barber shops in the world were the same. No matter what the name was, getting people to apply for a card was the same. The customer inside had already been tricked to the point of being tempted. While the two of them were chatting enthusiastically, Chen Guang, who was across the street, felt his eyes blur. Right under his eyes, the sign of Ajie's Hair Growth House had unexpectedly turned into Ajie's Barber Shop. Without any warning, the entire change process lasted for less than 1,000th of a second. It was completed in the blink of an eye. Then, the shampoo guy who was bragging about his business suddenly changed his words from hair growth house to bro. I'm not trying to brag, but our hairdresser's skills are the best among all the barber shops in the county. I'm not trying to brag, but our hairdresser is the best among all the barber shops in the county. Applying for our card is affordable and reliable. If you apply for a card now, you can charge 200 renminbi and get 100 renminbi free. There won't be such an event next week. Chen Guang sucked in a cold breath. The shampoo didn't know that his consciousness and outlook on life had been completely changed at this moment. He didn't notice anything unusual at all. Chen Guang looked up at the bright moon that was slowly rising in the distance. He couldn't help but think that at this moment, it wasn't just the hairdresser who had been changed, but everyone in the world except himself. But no one noticed it. This situation reminded him of a conjecture he had seen a long time ago. Some people said that the human universe didn't really exist. It was simply the embodiment of virtual data. It was formed by the projection of two-dimensional data into a three-dimensional world. The entire universe was a huge flat surface. Otherwise, why would the Milky Way be flat? In fact, that was because there were real projections under the universe. All the rules in the universe were also set by humans. Many people, including Chen Guang, scoffed at this idea. Everyone was alive and well. How could it be data? Did it mean that they were playing online games? Especially after Chen Guang obtained the Heavenly Holy Grail and walked through the small worlds like the world in the cup. He also saw the people in the cup trapped in the cage in the sea of time and the realm of true martial. He was even more certain that he was in the real world. But now his idea was shaken. Perhaps all of this was fake? Just like when he played the single-player game Legend of the Three Kingdoms. He used the Jinshan Ranger to modify Zhao Yun's martial power value to 99999. He could kill anyone with one slash. If the game character Zhao Yun was alive, would he know that his martial power value had been modified? Perhaps in his memory, his martial power value should have been this high from the beginning. Chapter 1226. Once this thought popped up in his mind, Chen Guang suddenly felt extremely terrified. If that was the case, could it be that he was also a fake? That everything was fake? But if I'm also fake, then what's real? Wait a minute. Two words suddenly popped up in Chen Guang's mind. Real. That's right, the real world. Wasn't it referring to the real existence? If everything in the past was an illusion, then now, Should this be the process of evolving from illusion to reality? With this thought in mind, Chen Guang looked down at his hands again and clenched them tightly. The sense of reality that he had never felt before became exceptionally strong in his heart. But after the sense of reality, he felt exceptionally empty, as if everything was very illusory. It seemed that this was the case. In a sense, the world that he lived in before was also not a complete existence. There were still loopholes in the rules, just like how scientists' research on the wave-particle duality was sometimes correct and sometimes wrong. Regarding the changes of many particles in the microscopic world, it was still impossible to arrive at an accurate conclusion. Various uncertainty laws for elementary particles often appeared in many textbooks. In research, even the existence of these particles was still in an unstable state. Let's simply assume that if a person's body was made up of countless alpha and beta elementary particles, but after billions of molecules, these alpha and beta elementary particles would become gamma and delta elementary particles 1 second later. The real process might be billions of times more complicated than this, but the concept could be understood in this way. Then, this meant that as a living life, the parts that made up the body would always be constantly shaking and changing. In other words, the person would still be the same person, but after billions of molecules 1 second later, this person would objectively become another person. This meant that everyone would always be reincarnating all the time, but they themselves would not be aware of it. Thinking about it this way, it was really frightening to think about it in detail. Therefore, according to Chen Guang's current judgment, it was very likely that after the real world and the real world were completely integrated, the original incomplete rules might be completed, and the microscopic particles that were always changing might truly stabilize. According to the speed of human progress, it might take at least hundreds of millions of years of reproduction and development to see that level. They would have to leave their footprints all over the universe and constantly improve their civilization level in the universe. Only then would they be able to use the power of science and technology to peel off the surface of the microscopic particles layer by layer, break through the shackles that the microscopic world could always be infinitely divided, and explore the truth bit by bit. Only then would they realize the truth of this change. But objectively speaking, that was what happened. Now that the worlds had fused, when the microscopic fundamental particles had completely stabilized and were magnified to the macroscopic level visible to the naked eye, and then to the entire Earth, the entire solar system, or perhaps the entire universe, there would also be an invisible fundamental change. A stable world is a real world. In addition, if one tried to understand it from the level of life and soul, they might be able to deduce it in this way. The incomplete world was actually an illusory world. In such a world, the soul was often in a state of closed circulation. After a person died, there would be reincarnation. Although Chen Guang had never died, no one knew if the world after death really existed, and no one had ever been able to prove whether reincarnation was real or not. But according to everything he knew now, he deduced two possibilities. Humans did indeed have souls, and after death, they could indeed be reincarnated. The many legends and myths left by the ancients had already shown their thoughts on this. The people of Huaxia described it as the underworld and the heavenly court. The Hindustani Buddhists described it as the afterlife of cultivation, and the Christians described it as heaven and hell. In short, different regions would have different ways of thinking, but the essential meaning was the same. It was just that with the further development of science and technology, people chose to believe in science again and question this theological or metaphysical theory. But science and theology, in a sense, were different approaches to achieve the same result. When the scientific theory advanced to various uncertain laws, whether humans were really alive or not was already a metaphysical topic. After all, the human body was also composed of hydrocarbons, molecules, atoms, protons, neutrons, electrons, and even more subtle quark particles that could only exist for a very short period of time. The material that made up the body was forever changing. Only the soul that the body carried could be eternal. However, the price of eternity was that every time one died, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Even if one was reincarnated, the memory of one's previous life would completely disappear. In this way, even if the soul was continued, the life at a certain stage had completely died. The soup of Meng Po was a speculation in the ancient Huaxia legends, and it did not really exist. But it was an unquestionable fact that the soul carried by an unstable body could not be continued. This kind of reincarnation and rebirth was no different from real death. Another possibility was that after a person died, they did not really disappear, but turned into another kind of life in the form of a soul life, or in the form of an energy life, and continued to live in this universe. But after the real world and the real world merged, what would the world, or the universe, look like? Chen Guang crossed his legs and sat on the chair, fiddling with the world map that he found in his hands. His mind was completely open to thinking about these questions. After the fusion, would everyone remember the things of their previous life after resurrection? But this was no different from the lower realms like the transient sea and the realm of true martial. Those who were trapped inside would instead feel that it was a cage. It's the space and channel for ascension. At this moment, Liuli's voice sounded in his heart. This divine emperor had unconsciously started to pry into his thoughts again. Chen Guang asked, "Channel for ascension? Can you say it more clearly? In this world of yours, isn't there a story like this? It's said that Laozi rode a green bull out of Hanga Pass, and then the purple aura came from the east and ascended to immortality. Or it's like what is written in some martial arts novels, where someone trained his martial arts to the realm of great success and finally broke through the void. Or perhaps someone has cultivated enough merit and is ranked among the immortals." Liuli appeared to be exceptionally patient as she explained. Chen Guang was surprised. Could it be that these are all true? Fake, Liuli replied without hesitation. Chen Guang's face was full of pain. Then why did you say it? Liuli snorted. But we can't deny the wisdom of the ancients. Although their knowledge was not as good as you modern people, in terms of thinking, they were more imaginative and free. These myths and legends that you know are indeed the arrogant imagination of these ancients when they were thinking about life and death. But in a sense, they had indeed peeped into the next stage of thinking. It's a pity that they were not born in a good era. Even if they figured out the key points, they still couldn't jump out of the shackles of the rules. It's just like how they can see the moon when they look up, but they can never go up. Chen Guang said unwillingly, but now humans can land on the moon. Liuli snorted. That's right. Now that the real world has merged with your real world, then, your world has begun to become complete. So life in this universe has a channel for ascension. But isn't this the world in a cup? Where can it go? Chen Guang asked. Liuli thought for a while. Although the ordinary world in a cup is a world that was created, the real world, as one of the special worlds, has existed from the beginning in my memory. It's not that simple. As for how far it can go, in my opinion, there is only one possibility. As she spoke, Liuli's image gradually became clear in Chen Guang's mind. Her finger was pointing at the sky. Chen Guang looked up blankly, but only saw the ceiling. But a word suddenly burst out in his mind. Endless heavenly realm? That's right. Every single person know every single life. I don't know about that. I'm just guessing. Why don't you try killing someone? I can't talk to anyone after I kill them. I don't know the answer either. And why would I kill someone for no reason? Chapter 12:27. Then there's no other way. You'll find out when you die one day. Don't you look forward to it? Liuli teased him with a wicked sense of humor. Chen Guang actually seriously considered this question for about 10 seconds, and finally came to a very depressing conclusion. In his current state, wanting to die was millions of times more difficult than wanting to live well. Say, why are you so unlucky? It's hard to want to die, but it's also hard to live. If there really is a past life and this life, you must have been a rotten person in your previous life. Otherwise, you wouldn't have suffered such retribution in this life. Shut up. Goodbye. Chen Guang decided to ignore Liuli. At the same time, he found that the world map in front of him had changed in the blink of an eye. What the hell did the world map change? This was not just a simple picture. This meant that the terrain of the entire Earth had changed. Right before his eyes, the North and South America on the world map had been completely separated into two lumps. This was not the end. Africa and Europe were not separated. And there was no Mediterranean Sea. They were collectively called non-European continents. Then in this world's online slang, there must be no titles such as European Emperor and Unlucky Emperor. The archipelago of South Asia was completely connected to Oceania. The sea level between Asia and Oceania was smooth, with only a few small islands dotted with stars. The Bering Strait between Asia and South America was widened. Alaska no longer existed, but was flattened and pressed on South America. In addition, Chen Guang found that he was originally in Japan, but now the long and narrow island of Japan was also gone. It was completely connected to the mainland of China. As for the peninsula under the rooster's head of China, it also did not exist. Looking at the territory of China, which was at least a quarter larger than the 9.6 million square kilometers in his memory, Chen Guang was speechless for a long time. Not only that, the original messy names of the countries on the world map had also been rearranged. Chen Guang looked carefully for a while and slowly confirmed one thing. The number of countries seemed to have changed. Some countries no longer existed, such as the island countries, but there were some countries that he had never heard of. The overall number had decreased slightly. Silently putting down the map, Chen Guang turned his head to look out the window. His mind was a mess. This kind of operation was too overbearing, too King good at playing. At this moment, someone knocked on his door. Chen Guang looked down at the time. Before he knew it, it was already 11:30. Chen Guang, are you inside? I was eating barbecued meat outside just now, so I brought some back for your supper. The barbecue in Lilai County could be said to be the best in the entire province. Other than being a little too expensive, there was no other problem. Chen Guang also hadn't eaten for a long time. He felt that it would be good to eat some barbecued meat at such a special time to calm his nerves. So he opened the door and asked, Mom, why are you still eating barbecue outside at this time? Chen Guoli gave him a backhand smack on the forehead. Did you take the wrong medicine? Since when did I become your mom? Chen Guang felt tired. It was really hard for him to live. Taking the barbecue wrapped in foil from his father, Chen Guang asked casually, Is my sister asleep? Why don't we ask her to get up and eat some? Chen Guoli flicked him again. What, your sister? That's your brother. Chen Guang wanted to slap himself to death. If I say another word, I'll be a fool. But he couldn't help it. By the way, Dad, why don't we go to Japan as a family someday? This time, Chen Guoli didn't knock him on the forehead. He just looked confused. Japan? What is that place? Chen Guang looked at his father's completely confused expression and immediately confirmed his thoughts. Sure enough, in the world that had been completed, Japan had never existed from the beginning. Looking down at the Liaodong province written on the map, Chen Guang finally accepted this cruel reality for a certain country. That, since it had become a part of China's territory, could the teachers still film? Pervert's brother, I'm sorry. I'm a sinner for all eternity. Teachers, there's no more. His father couldn't stand Chen Guang's various mental disorders anymore. He scolded him a few more words and told him to quickly eat the barbecue while it was still hot. Then he returned to the master bedroom. Chen Guang took the hot barbecue back to the desk and sat in front of the computer with a pained expression. He took out the state of mind of going to the execution ground and opened the magnetic link search website that he had used countless times in his browser's favorites folder. He entered a few mysterious codes that he was familiar with by heart. THU 78123, HKO 13985, etc. Actually, they were all there. He was simply stunned. Then, with the mood of a pilgrimage, he quickly downloaded the treasure behind these mysterious codes into the network disk. Then, he locked the bedroom door out of habit to prevent his parents from suddenly breaking in at the critical moment. Then, he clicked on the main film with great excitement. It was still the familiar face, the familiar plot, the familiar expression, the familiar fountain and whatnot. But there was one big difference. The people inside were speaking Chinese. Chen Guang and his friends were simply stunned. His friends were even so frightened that they vomited. After a violent convulsion, Chen Guang suddenly felt that everything had become so calm. There was even a feeling of enlightenment in his mind, that he had seen through the world of mortals. Of course, this territory had been separated from the territory of China for too long, and it had been deeply invaded by European and American culture, forming a social, economic, and culture that was completely different from the Orthodox Chinese. In order to take back this land, the predecessors of the old masters also gave the Liaodong Special Administrative Region great autonomy, and the tradition of love-action martial arts fighting was developed, but on the surface, it was prohibited to flow to other areas. Of course, that was the number one driving force of human technological progress. People in the old world could rack their brains to come up with all kinds of special effects across the coastline, and they could not be prevented despite repeated prohibitions. Magnetic links, BT torrents, web disks, Q groups, WeChat, Weibo, and so on, there was nothing that could not be done. Now that it had become one of their own, it was even more explosive when it spread. Moreover, like the original Japan, the infantry war discipline was still illegal in the Liaodong Special Administrative Region, but it could be distributed overseas. And of course, it was very easy to export it and sell it domestically. Those who understood would naturally understand. In short, under this series of changes, this rather special situation was created. In addition, looking at the whole world, the changes in the Liaodong Special Administrative Region were still just a drop in the ocean. There were differences in the historical evolution of countries all over the world. Unfortunately, it was still a little difficult to read the article. After figuring out the problem that he was most concerned about, Chen Guang turned off the computer and went to bed. No matter how important the matter was, he would wait until tomorrow to read it. The next morning, Chen Guang woke up early. In order to prevent his father from talking to him and accidentally saying something wrong and getting his head smacked, Chen Guang decisively went out and asked for a private VIP room in the internet cafe outside. Because he had a straight face, although the cafe manager recognized him, he did not dare to disturb him. As a hometown native, although Chen Guang was still a well-known celebrity, there was not much mystery in Lilai County. In fact, the owner of the internet cafe was 2 years older than Chen Guang in high school, and he had some dealings with Chen Guang when he was studying. Another night passed, and his view of the world became more normal. Day was still day, and night became night again. Chen Guang read the article more easily. After spending the whole day in the internet cafe, Chen Guang walked out shaking his head in disappointment. He had suffered a lot. He never thought that under the new worldview, the world's most powerful country in technology and military was not the United States, but Huaxia. Now it was acting as the world's policeman, maintaining world peace everywhere. The world's first GDP and the world's seventh GDP per capita were all from Huaxia. The world's first PC processor design, manufacturing, and production company was not Intel, nor was it an agricultural company, but a Chinese company established in Yanjing's Zhongguancun by Huaxia people. The one with the most aircraft carriers, the most advanced tanks, the most advanced metallurgical manufacturing industry, and the most advanced precision manufacturing industry was not the United States or Germany, but Huaxia. The reason for this difference in nature began in 1850. The complete destruction of the Qing dynasty happened decades earlier than in the history of the Old World. In the most critical decades, a group of reformists briefly established a parliamentary dynasty that ruled China. It was called the Hua dynasty. In the crucial Second Industrial Revolution, the Huaxia dynasty worked hard to catch up. It continued to make progress that was left behind in the past few hundred years of seclusion. It also brought into full play the deep-rooted creativity and constructiveness of the Chinese people. Although there was still a gap between them and the European and American powers, they could at least see the tale of others. When the Second World War broke out, the well-prepared Huaxia was far from as weak as it looked. The Old World fought a long war for 15 years. In the history of the New World, the war lasted less than 4 years. The United States of Japan was dumbfounded by the Shenangjia plan by the two big bullets codenamed Dongjua and Baichi. They decisively raised the white flag. After that, they were completely liberated, and the new Huaxia Republic was officially established. They used the nuclear power in their hands to frantically plunder resources and technology from all over the world. The overall national strength of the Huaxia Republic was estimated to have caught up with the United States around 1985, and since then, it has surpassed them. Today, apart from being the leader in various fields of science and technology, the most typical example was that the high-speed rail in Huaxia could run stably at 400 kilometers per hour without any safety accidents. The average speed of the high-speed rail in the world, Germany, was not even 250 kilometers per hour. The gap was obvious. Construction was an innate ability of the Chinese people. We Chinese could even do farming in Africa. It was also because of the rapid pace of globalization. Otherwise, with the ability of the Huaxia people, they could even recover to the extent of the Han and Tang dynasties, where the GDP of a country was more than that of all the other countries in the world combined. In addition, there was also a huge difference in the long river of history. For example, there were many differences in the poems and songs that had been passed down from ancient times to the present. In the history of the New World, there were also the existence of Li Bai and Du Fu. However, these two poets were not as down and out as the two in the Old World. Instead, they had ascended to the top. Li Bai was the assistant minister of the Ministry of War of the Tang dynasty, and Du Fu was the minister of the Ministry of Rights. They were busy with government affairs and military affairs all day long. How could they have the time to recite poems? These two were just typical representatives. There were many similar situations. Many of the people who left their names in history had overlapping names, but their achievements and fields were like heaven and earth. The later lord of southern Tang, Li Yu, was not a subjugated monarch. After him, southern Tang lasted for nearly 100 more years. Then, hundreds of years later, Du Mu could not have written a sentence like, "The merchant girl did not know the hatred of a subjugated country. Across the river, she sang the flower of the backyard." This was the butterfly effect. Li Yu did not subjugate his country, and his jade tree backyard flower did not become the infamous sound of a subjugated country. Du Mu also could not have written the poem, Wandering in the Qinhuai River, to satirize the later lord of southern Tang. But correspondingly, while history had lost some pearls, it had left behind some golden sentences. In the history of the New World, there were also poetry immortals and poetry saints, but they were not Li Bai and Du Fu, but two other people. The artistic achievements and attainments of these two people were not much worse than the original two. It was just that the essays and poems they wrote were different, and their life experiences were different. However, these things were too far away. Although it seemed shocking, it did not have much of an impact on Chen Guang's life. There were many that were more recent, and they had a great impact on him. Through the evolution of history, Chen Guang was also closely related to something else. For example, many of the classic songs and martial arts novels that have been popular in the past few decades, such as Battle Break, Dolua, Grave Robbers Chronicles, and other well-known web novels did not appear. Even the lousy web novelist called Thing in the Fire, that Chen Guang had been following, had disappeared. The book that he had bookmarked on Qidian's network had become a huge scammer by the name of Shui Patian. This was simply toxic. He gave up after reading less than 3 chapters. F***CK. This scammer author was just like his name. He really wanted to break the heavens. In the old world, writers of this level should not even have the courage to upload their works, let alone sign a contract. The most infuriating thing was that this guy called Shui Patian was very popular, at least 10,000 subscriptions. How easy were the people in the New World to be satisfied? I can make countless people kneel and lick my Legend of the Evil God. Right? Forget it, the old man did not lack money, so there was no need for him to be a plagiarist. Chen Guang shook his head as he returned home. When he entered the door, he saw Hua Lingshan. Student Lingshan called out sweetly, "Brother, come and eat." Chen Guang's eyes were filled with tears. "Brother, You finally called me brother. Chapter 12:28. Oh, okay. Back at the dining table, Chen Guang still didn't dare to say much, but Chen Guoli didn't give him a chance. He said happily, "Today, your mom cooked personally. Why don't you comment on the taste?" Chen Guang thought about it again and decided to muster up the courage to give a thumbs up. "The taste is great." Then Feng Rong, Chen Guoli, and Hua Lingshan's expressions changed at the same time. Feng Rong looked embarrassed. "I know you often eat good food outside. You look down on your mom's cooking." Chen Guang silently turned his face away. His heart was tired, really tired. After 4 or 5 days, everything that Chen Guang was familiar with finally slowly returned to the right track. Although the world's politics, economy, history, and geography had changed, at least he didn't have to be careful when communicating. He was afraid that he would do something that violated common sense, and say something that violated common sense. Seeing that everything had settled down, Chen Guang was ready to leave Lilai County for the time being. Now that he had enjoyed a rare vacation, it was time to return to Wujing. Whether it was the Guangdong General Administration, the Tianguang Group, or Zhuo Jingxi, who had just returned to China with the photocatalyst products, they were all waiting for him in Wujing. Now, although he was still a 4th-year student, his special experience had created a special life for him. Except for the final exam and graduation oral defense, he had nothing in common with ordinary college students. Because he was inexplicably teleported back by the turbulence of time and space, he didn't leave a car in the county. He didn't have the luxury of going to the county's 4S store to buy a car when he returned to Wujing. He also felt that it would be too troublesome to have someone pick him up from Wujing. So he simply got up early the next day, put on a cap, sunglasses, mask and scarf, went straight to the station, bought a bus ticket, and took the bus back to Wujing. Ever since Chen Guang made a name for himself, he couldn't remember how long it had been since he last took a bus. Needless to say, it was a very special experience. Curling up in the bus, he took out his phone and began to fiddle with it, watching the news. For him, everything in the outside world was new. The whole world had changed, but he was the only one who retained his memories of the past. This was an indescribable feeling. It was as if he had transmigrated to a parallel dimension, but the people around him were still the same people. Faced with this situation, Chen Guang had a feeling that he was the only sober person in the world. His mind contained another world, but the minds of others contained a whole new world. No one knew about the various epochs that had appeared in the past. The ancient books passed down by the ancients, the crystallization of the ancestors' wisdom, had all become stories that Chen Guang could only enjoy in his memory. The people in the New World might have similar stories in their memories, but they were fundamentally different from what Chen Guang knew. Along the way, Chen Guang fiddled with his phone while listening to the other passengers on the bus. The news in front of his eyes, and the things that others were talking about were half unfamiliar to him, and the other half were familiar to him. Things that Chen Guang was familiar with, such as the Chinese football team's daily defeat, and their failure to break through the World Cup qualifiers. Yes, the national football team was indeed the national football team. Do not have any expectations for them. Even if the world was destroyed, they would still be stable. However, others said that the group of people who played football did not know how to follow the example of the Chinese men's basketball team. Look at the Chinese men's basketball team, which was ranked in the top 3 in the world. At this moment, Chen Guang was dumbfounded. Didn't Yao Ming retire? Why did the Chinese men's basketball team become so strong? Unless the old man personally participated, it might not be possible, right? Of course, if there was someone like the old man, who could shoot anywhere he wanted, this kind of sport would probably not be a problem for other countries. This thought flashed in Chen Guang's mind for a moment, but he dismissed it on the spot. With his ability, participating in this kind of competitive sport was too much of a bully. To him, there was no sense of accomplishment. After a while, the people on the bus started talking about the variety show that was popular around the world a few days ago. It was God of Joy, which Chen Guang personally starred in. Chen Guang quickly put down his phone and pricked up his ears. As these people chatted, all they said was that Almighty Superman was really awesome, really strong, and that his combat power was really off the charts. Chen Guang felt that it was only natural. Are you kidding me? I can even pull a high-speed rail with my bare hands. And you guys are still not licking my boots. At that moment, the content of the conversation between two people in front of him made him feel exceptionally puzzled. Which monster do you think is the strongest? As one of them chatted, he suddenly lowered his voice to a volume that only the person sitting next to him could hear. I think the black and white impermanence in the labyrinth is the strongest. I don't think so. I think those mosquitoes are fiercer, and they even have growth attributes. Speaking of which, I really envy Almighty Superman, an S-rank player. If he had not personally released this video, we wouldn't even know that he had actually become an S-rank god. Actually, everyone has been guessing this for a long time, but he did not take the initiative to say it, and we can't ask him. What if he is not a player? What should we do? Of course, with the abilities he has displayed in the real world, it is only natural that he has the strength of an S rank in the game. But I don't quite understand. Since he is already so strong, why have we never encountered him in the game? Isn't that simple? He is an S rank, and we are just E rank noobs. There is no way we can enter his map, right? Come to think of it, the other players who entered the game with Almighty Brother did not seem to have made any moves. These people have all reached C rank in the end, right? I really envy them for having such a good life. If it were a normal newbie, they would not have received such treatment. Who knows how many times they would have died. These people are practically leveling up while lying down. After becoming players, we have already entered 3 missions, but we are still stuck at E rank. The voices of these two people were extremely low. Not only that, as they spoke, a special barrier appeared beside them, completely blocking the hearing of the other people on the bus. The other people on the bus were talking about the computer special effects in the later parts of God of Joy. However, these two people were talking about the same thing from completely different perspectives. Chen Guang, on the other hand, could clearly hear their conversation. However, he could only feel his scalp going numb. His mind was filled with 1,000 black question marks. What the hell is this? What are they playing at? If I did not hear wrongly, they seem to be talking about something that happened in the massacre world. But how could they know? It sounds like these scenes happened in God of Joy. But how is that possible? Also game? Players? S rank? E rank? What is this? The two youngsters sitting in the first few rows are also players? And they have already completed 3 missions? Suppressing the indescribable shock in his heart, Chen Guang was finally willing to open his mobile phone and open the hi. My God. In the 4th episode, he directly skipped to the latter half and finished watching the special effects that Chu Zijin had added. Then, he touched his forehead, his heart filled with confusion. There were too many YS in his heart. In fact, there was someone who could answer him now. It was not just one person, but an entire organization. If the world knew that the only true S-rank player in the world, the Minister of Heaven of China's strongest awakened organization, Chen Guang, was actually so surprised that there really were games and players in this world, countless people would probably laugh their heads off. The chat between the two people in front had not ended. If I had known, I would have watched this show earlier. The Almighty Superman has shown us a whole new realm. Now, I have more confidence in surviving in the game. I think so too. Maybe what prompted him to show the video was that we humans have been at a disadvantage recently. Our morale is low, and we can't even raise our heads after being beaten by the Protoss. Now we know that there is actually such an expert among us. Is he going to lead the human race to blow the horn of counterattack? Speaking of which, we are all players. Why do we have so many taboos? We absolutely cannot reveal our identity to ordinary people, but he has done it well. He directly brought what happened in the game to a variety show. I've already said us E-rank noobs shouldn't try to figure out the realm of the legendary S-rank powerhouses. Apart from himself, everything about S-rank can only be guessed. That's true. Maybe after surpassing A-rank, he can break away from the shackles of the game. I really envy him. Right now, we feel like we're walking in the dark in brocade clothes. It's so uncomfortable. It's good enough that we can continue to live. Being chosen by the game is also our fate. It's not like we've gained nothing, right? It's just that we can't bear to use our reward points to exchange for money. Otherwise, we would have been rich long ago. That's right. Those with weak minds have all been reset. So look at these people in the car. They don't even know that the reason they can live peacefully is because of us, the poor chosen ones, carrying the burden for them. The two of them did not know that the almighty Superman, they had been talking about all this, while was sitting in the second to last row behind them with his neck shrunk. He was so shocked by their conversation that he did not want to say a word. At the same time, Chen Guang was also baffled. He had no idea what caused this. If what they said was true, why didn't anyone contact him for the past few days, after releasing such an important piece of information on the variety show? In the setting of the New World, what did I tell the people from the General Administration of Guangding and the Tianguang Group before I came back? He was a little regretful. If he had known, he would have called the people in his address book earlier. Otherwise, he would not have been so lost now. However, after thinking about it, he decided to forget it. It was not very clear to talk over the phone. With the previous state, he was afraid that they would not be able to communicate. He would talk face to face when he returned to Wujing. As Chen Guang thought about this, he raised his head and looked out of the car window. At this moment, there were still countless threads of faith points that others could not see slowly surging over from all over the world. The heavenly holy grail in his bag began to tremble slightly. Chen Guang picked up the grail and looked down at it. At this time, my strongest physical idol is about to be born? Finally! You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.